Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm here with Objectivist Dollar. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, what can I say? I'm the Objectivist Dollar. I'm from Russia. That's pretty much everything people know about me these days. Except my taste of women.
The Russian version of Charles too, pretty much.
Charles Free.
He's back, guys. Oh man.
Well, I do have the same taste in women as he does, except he never specified color.
So which color do you prefer?
African color.
African? Oh my god.
Zulu specific. You didn't know? I thought everybody
I did not
story.
know that. Oh man.
You and Joe's server, Joe tells everyone that African Objectivist Dollar likes African women.
Oh man, I don't pay enough attention to that server, I guess. I should start doing that more, but
yeah. You should join mine server then. I have a bot that I coded on Python that reposts Instagram pictures of pretty women I like.
Oh, nice.
Right into my server.
How many servers are there? There's Existences, Charles's.
Mine is an Objectivist server.
It's not an Objectivist server?
No, it's just server for pals to hang out.
That makes sense.
I was never able to maintain a serious tone. It usually devolves into nationalists yelling at each other. I have three nationalists in my server and they cuckoo a bit.
Yeah. Nationalists are not a big fan of those people.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Certainly. I started into Tom's server and everybody there was nationalist.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some topics. I mean, what got you into objectivism?
Well, mostly reading. That's what I do all the time. Just before this podcast, you might have seen when I was opening my balcony, I put back Opar in Russian. You know, the Leonid Pekov's book, Objectivism, Philosophy of Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Right before you texted me, I was reading it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Also, I was helping Existence University find the passage we were talking about.
What were you guys talking about?
There is a place in that book where Rand is presented with example that counter-argument to her hypothesis about concepts. So she's like, we can have a folder about furniture, and a table will be defined as something flat, and I can't translate it properly. Basically, she gave a definition of a concept. And one of the professor asks, what if table isn't staying on its legs, but suspended in the air by chains? Is that still a table or not? And we discussed that with XU.
Yeah, I mean, like concepts aren't really intrinsic. It's more like an interaction between the two, like the human being and reality. So like how it should be used kind of is the best way to define it. Like how what?
The utility of the object.
Yeah.
Table is only a table because we're capable of using it as a table, not because there's some intrinsic tableness to it.
Yeah, and this dichotomy is so prevalent when it comes to concept formation and just epistemological sort of things. Because I mean, it's just everyone like wants to go to like one of those weird things that doesn't make any sense. Like, it's like we just call it whatever we want for whatever reason because we feel like it, versus like, no, this is intrinsically how it is. It's like based off this like form of table or whatever. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Well, in reality, there's a medium. It's both because we have a concept of a table and because it can be used as a table. It's the utility of the thing paired with our... there's, of course, language barrier. You see, I read it in Russian. So the question wasn't really about that. You asked how I got here.
Yeah.
Well, at first, what I was reading, being grown in a typical Russian family, my parents were speculants, meaning they were getting books, they were buying books and reselling them for bigger price. Even though they both were members of KPSS, the Communist Party. That wasn't really legal, you know?
Yeah.
But USSR crashed anyway, and they stopped selling books because they both got normal job. So in my room, there's like a big, just whole furniture of books. You can find literally anything there. It's called library of my own. I grew with having a library in my room.
Oh,
There's
nice.
Dumas, Dostoevsky, Griboyedov, everything, especially Russian classics.
Yeah.
So I read literally everything, and I was commended for that because my father is also, he reads a lot, even though not serious literature, and my mother is literally a literature teacher.
Ah, nice.
So the whole family reads a lot.
Ah, nice. Yeah. Um, I guess I'm reading Dostoevsky right now, Crime and Punishment. What's your?
How
Do you
can
not
you?
like him? Do you
I
not like
hate
Dostoevsky?
Dostoevsky literature.
Oh
It's
man,
one of
why?
the one of the parts that I disagree with Rand heavily is her praise for Dostoevsky and Hugo.
Hmm.
Hugo is boring and Dostoevsky is just borderline vomit inducing for me.
What was the last thing you said?
Vomit inducing.
Oh, vomit
Like,
inducing.
yeah, you read Crime and Punishment. The first 20 pages I can't stand.
Why?
It's about some whiny person who just hates everything and acknowledges that he's nothing and
Yeah.
he's worthless. He's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
worthless as a character.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And all Dostoevsky characters are like that.
Hmm.
I have nothing to look up for. I know that
Yeah.
they just fuck up anything.
That makes sense. I don't know. I think it's interesting to see like the whole like perspective on like how he can't hide the lie forever, kind of that sort of thing. Like how he feels like he has to get it out. He can't lie basically. I think it's an interesting book like psychologically when it comes to honesty and those sort of things.
But for me, it's very predictable because I literally live in Russia. That's also Dostoevsky is very like putting aside my own problems with him. Like let's forget that. That's just my problem.
Mm-hmm.
In Russian school, Dostoevsky is praised a lot,
Yeah.
and he's not praised for anything good either.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. He has a
They
lot of
keep
like
finding
bad
hidden
philosophy.
meanings in him.
Yeah, he has a lot. There's a lot of like bad philosophical things in those books, but I don't know. Just like the form of like building these sort of like I don't know, just the romanticism of the book I like quite a bit. Like this sort of um like how the characters like make choices and like have see what the outcomes of those choices are and those sort of things.
Yes, but
If
they
that
are the
makes sense.
same choices all the time.
Hmm.
They're always the wrong choices.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
nothing Dostoevsky character does that's ever good.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
He has a very pessimistic sense of life. I definitely see that.
well, he was also very like. It's weird how Dostoevsky criticizes Nietzsche in one of his books, and he completely fails on that.
Hmm.
And it's weird how
Yeah.
both of them were very sick people. Do you know that Nietzsche basically struggled from headaches for whole life?
Yeah, Nietzsche.
Like
Yeah,
he
that would
wakes
make
up
sense. That
headache.
would make sense. I don't know. It seemed like I don't know. There was a lot of aspects of or there's a lot of aspects of like Raskolnikov that seem very Nietzschean. That seems to
Yeah,
be
it
like his
was
driving
intended a
philosophy.
bit like a critique of Nietzsche.
Yeah, that would
He
make
was
sense then.
famous in Russia in that time. There was even Silver Age philosophers. You see, in Russia we have Golden Age poetry, Silver Age poetry.
Mm.
I can't tell you exactly the ages, but I know that they're classified by special examples. So Silver Age poets were very interested in Nietzsche because he was a very good poet. If
Mm.
Nietzsche is anything good, he's a good poet. Like
Yeah.
his poetry, it's kind of Slavic in a bit. It's very
Mm.
imaginative and graphic. You can't read Zarathustra. Even like I read Zarathustra at least 10 times, and even though I don't agree with much of it anymore,
Yeah.
I recognize that it's very poetic and beautiful.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
a struggle of someone.
I think I started reading Zarathustra, but I don't know. That was a long time ago, and I didn't really understand it very well.
It's very hard if you don't read the whole other aspects of Nietzsche.
Yeah.
It's very compressed, essentialized.
Hmm.
So it's kind of where I was going anyway. When I was reading a lot, eventually I stumbled on Nietzsche, and that was the first real serious philosophy that I ever read.
Yeah.
Like before that, I read a lot of communists who didn't really explain communism well, and it never made sense to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a book called Godfly. It's written by Ethel Lillian Voynich. She's basically a communist, but her characters they don't make sense in the communist paradigm.
Hmm.
They think about themselves and their own betterment. They
Yeah.
don't really fight for others.
Huh. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know much about that author in particular, but that
So when
seems
I
kind of
stumbled on philosophy, Nietzsche made the most sense because out of all of them, Nietzsche is the most selfish one.
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Because
Rand got a lot of influence from Nietzsche, especially early on, but obviously
early
she.
on she got some of it, but as a person who read whole Nietzsche through and through, and a lot of Rand, they're kind of nothing alike when it comes to end points.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, start points are similar, but end points are completely different.
Nietzsche's a lot more
Starting
focused
just
on like the will and like what you want and not really rationality. Like he kind of subverts rationality and it's essentially just like
rationality
intuition.
for Nietzsche is but a tool for will to power.
Yep, yep.
Rationality isn't a thing in itself; it's just a tool that is part of our will to overcome. So when I was reading Nietzsche, he made most sense because ever since I was a kid, I was selfish,
Yeah.
and I never was really guilty about that because it never made sense to be guilty about it. I think of myself. I don't hurt other people. I don't ask of other people anything. I want to live my good life. And even when I was like, I can remember this moment to this day. I was sitting in a bus thinking about it, like, why people keep telling me I'm selfish and egoistic? Why aren't you? And why my sister just like a day ago told me with like a smirk how you always will know how to better yourself out of all people.
Huh. I mean, that's kind of a compliment. Knowing how, like,
yes, but not in Russian culture.
oh yeah,
In
yeah,
Russian
for sure.
culture, bettering yourself is a sin.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys were the communists, so
Oh,
for
yeah.
the longest time.
And when I thought about it, I came up with like, but my selfishness is rational. I'm a rational egoist. I never read Rand at that point. I had no idea she existed.
Oh man,
But I still came up with this.
that's interesting.
Like, of course, it was not as complex and not as well written as hers. I just came up with a name for it that is very similar.
Huh, that's
Also,
interesting. It seems like that kind of like philosophy kind of like, I don't know, like you figured out like a few like basic things and that was kind of like the way that you looked at the world at that point, and then Rand just made that explicit kind of.
Yeah, and she makes more sense than everybody else too. Like, for example, Nietzsche. When you look at Nietzsche and you read his philosophy, there is a way to make it into a proper egoistic philosophy that will actually work for your benefit. Except then you realize that it will be going against his philosophy in a sense. Because he doesn't want personal benefits. He wants more like evolutionary species benefit. His Übermensch is not his own, not his selfish desire. It's more on the sense of like, if you read Genealogy of Morals, the Uber people, the best people he gives examples of, are those not really the happiest bunch. They're just healthy and warlike.
So like it's more like a desire to get the species to this higher level, like to create Ubermenches through like evolution over time and like sacrifice yourself for that?
Or not sacrifice yourself, but yes, in Zarathustra there's a famous passage where he says that humanity must have a goal finally. The whole of humanity. Meaning all species need to work towards Ubermensch.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
Well, for me, it never made sense.
That's very, very opposed to like. Yeah, it seems like definitely a contradiction with regards to egoism. Like if you have like a purpose as a species, that's not really like your selfish interest as much.
He famously also wrote an aphorism that without happiness, everything would be achieved better. Ooh. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, if only man could forget his happiness, he would achieve his power better.
Ooh, that's really bad. Oh man.
Yeah, Nietzsche was very compartmentalized.
Yeah, for sure.
He didn't really know what he. It also a problem with his sickness and his cure as well. You know that he went insane eventually.
Yep. What was his cure for?
They were trying to cure his nerves, but it was 1890s.
Yeah.
They had no idea how to cure neurological symptoms. So they kept giving him Veronal. Veronal is very bad for your brain. You're not supposed to take it a lot.
Yeah.
It basically burns your brain out. And Nietzsche, he developed addiction to morphine and to Veronal. He took it a lot. So eventually he just broke. His brain never went anywhere. Instead of just being schizo.
Huh. Yeah, I mean...
Think of modern medicine, he would be a better philosopher.
Yeah. I mean...
Although he would never be a Randian philosopher, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, drugs destroy your mind. Holy crap.
And they were prescripted. He didn't know any better either. Like, he was not a physician. Doctor told him to drink Veronal, he did it.
Yeah.
He can be blamed for it even.
Yeah, thank I would say God, but like thank man for capitalism and medicine and all those good things. But
and he famously disliked capitalism too. Although in his writings, it's one thing, in his letters it's quite another. In his letters, he hates nationalists and anti-Semites the most. If you see someone addressed as the bitch, sorry if you don't like profanity in your streams, if someone is addressed that way in his letters, that's his sister. That's always his sister.
Really?
That because she was manipulative and anti-Semitic. He hated her. And in Twilight of the Gods, he says that German nationalists are, I'm paraphrasing again because I read in Russian, but in Russian he says that there are movement of dumb cattle with fucking hell. What do you call those things animals have?
Horns?
Yeah, horn. Dumb, big horned cattle. That's how he calls them.
I mean,
he was very against herd mentality.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a good thing. I mean to that extent, because I mean I'm sure he said some good things about nationalism. Nationalism is
nationalism isn't his thing.
Yeah, no, like good things from a bad perspective, like attacking nationalism, like good. What we would consider good. Yeah.
He was very much against it because it kind of put he was against the statism too, but not for good reasons either.
Yeah,
for him, statism puts strong people into the servitude of a state or a nation.
So what was his like political perspective on things?
Military republic.
Military republic?
Like if you he never wrote a political tractate or political book about it, but if you read his letters, in my opinion, he would be for a republic that prioritize military.
Why did he support that from the rest of his philosophy?
No, because his philosophy goes for achieving Übermensch. He believed in some weird Lamarckism, the belief that evolution not just artificially selects something, but you can also train something over time in population. Like he gives example in one of his books that in Florence, pretty much every woman sang. Everyone was singing. And over time, a lot of children developed bigger lungs, and that's how it's supposed to happen. I'm not sure if that's even true. That doesn't really make sense evolutionary. It doesn't matter how much you train your lungs. They won't grow bigger much.
Yeah, and I mean that seems like a really weird misunderstanding of evolution, because evolution, it's more like just random mutations and then getting like selected for like, and then whichever ones like die off are the ones that die off, and the ones that survive are like better. So like
you can artificially select for some traits, but you can't. There are limits.
Yeah.
Like you can breed dogs that have bigger muscles, but you can never breed a dog that like 3 meters tall and have biceps the size of me. So Lamarckism was pretty much very popular in his time. Darwin barely wrote a book at that time, and it was just his one Darwin book. Nietzsche, by the way, didn't like Darwin either. There is a passage in Will to Power where he criticized Darwin, saying that strong do not survive. It's slightly above mediocre that survive. Strong are too fragile and complicated to survive. They need help from society.
So like what people did Nietzsche like? Like what sort of people did he get influenced by?
Cesare Borgia is the famous example. Cesare Borgia was son of Alexander Borgia, the Pope. He famously he's a warmonger, a warlord. Cesare Borgia always wanted more. He was known as a man of thousand faces because he was a hypocrite. He always lied to get what he wanted. And he was very power lustful.
Yeah.
His lust for power is idiotic. He kept fighting with people he had no qualm with. And he was famously defeated by a duchess who had like 2 guns in her castle. I think you have... Do you play Assassin's Creed?
What?
Do you play Assassin's Creed?
I don't play that many video games.
I think there's a battle against Cesare Borgia in Assassin's Creed.
That's interesting.
Well, the thing is, coming back to the topic at hand, Nietzsche made the most sense for me, but not completely. There was this constant thought in my mind that something is wrong. This doesn't really make sense. Why do I keep getting into these weird situations? Why over time, when I try to practice Nietzschean philosophy, I get less and less friends, I get more and more miserable, and just the world around me turns into a pack of lies. It can't be that this is actually to my advantage. It just doesn't work. It's like trying to swim in a swamp. You drown more and more all the time.
Yeah.
And then I read Fountainhead. And Fountainhead gave me, Fountainhead reads as a critique of Nietzsche, really. I don't know if she intended it that way. I think she denied that she did. But if someone struggles with Nietzsche, Fountainhead is a perfect book for them.
Yeah.
Have you read Fountainhead?
Yep, that was the first one that I read.
There is a passage in there where Gale Winant walks out of Banner and walks the street. It's very famous, I think. And in this passage, he says that I was the leader of men. I had a leash, but a leash is just a rope with knots on both sides. Meaning that Gale Winant shows that when you practice lust for power, you don't really control anything. You are controlled by others as much as your ability allows.
Yeah, that's one aspect that I really liked in the Fountainhead, because it really shows like a lot of perspectives on secondhandedness. Like not just like the whole like Keating, which is like a somewhat obvious example of secondhandedness. Like it also like shows how trying to gain power, and that's also secondhanded, and how that is also like not in your self-interest. Because a lot of people when they talk about, like, when you tell them that, oh, I'm an egoist, I think selfishness is a virtue, they're like, oh, so why can't you just like why don't you want to just come to power and enslave everybody? Why is that not what you want? And I mean,
well, speaking as somebody who had to lie his whole life, like my whole childhood, like I was pretty good at lying. I even developed a pathology. Like sometimes I need to think before say something, because my first instinct is to deny or lie. Because in my childhood, that was the safest bet. Like, I always did something shitty because I never been rewarded for anything. When you're not rewarded for anything and nothing good happens in your life, you just, and you don't have philosophy, you just start doing whatever is good right now. Like right now, if I lie, I will play some Morrowind. I know that further along the way she will know that I lied, but right now I will play some Morrowind. And that's how my life went until like university. And that's kind of what manipulation and lie always ends up being for you. It's a life in a moment. You can't plan anything because you know that you're tangled in a web of lies that just destroy your future. If you lie to your boss, you need to continuously lie to your boss.
Yep. Yeah, because like one lie, you can't support the lie without lying about another thing, and eventually you just, like, once you get far enough down the line, you are basically constructing a whole new reality, and you have 2 realities in your brain essentially.
Yeah, and eventually just it will collapse, and you will gain nothing.
Yeah, for sure.
When in reality, if you're actually productive, you don't lie to your boss. You sit next to your boss and ask what has to be done and what parts of the process need to be done the most. Like, I'm a quality assurance engineer. I test applications like that, not specifically Netflix, but like Netflix. Sorry, my water. If I'm to lie to my boss about what actually happened when I test, it just won't work. We'll waste time untangling my lies instead of actually using our life productively and checking and not curing, fixing problems with the application. The same applies to your life. If you keep lying about your problems, you're solving nothing. If you keep manipulating people to try and solve your problem, you're also gaining nothing. You can't respect a person that you just manipulate.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Nietzschean morality.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like impossible to maintain any sort of relationship where you're being dishonest with somebody, because I mean, you're not like, they don't like you for who you are at that point. They like you for like this basically like facade that you've put up, that this thing that you've created that isn't actually you, and that's not a real sort of friendship. It's more, I don't know, it's like way, I don't know how to explain it. It's like
you're selling yourself short.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the word, because you're not presenting the world with image of you. You're just lying to yourself and others.
Yeah,
it won't ever work.
And I think a lot of it, for a lot of people, comes from a lack of sort of self-esteem, which is extremely prevalent. It's just this feeling that if I'm myself, like, nobody's gonna like me. I don't offer any real values myself to other people, and that's really damaging. I mean, it just we have such a like anti-self-esteem, anti-pride sort of culture, and it's so damaging.
You're telling me. My mother recently told me that, you see, I'm planning a vacation to another country. It's called Curacao, and it's Caribbean island. It's very beautiful and all that, but the point is, when I told my mother about it, her first instinct, just like the instinct of my colleague at work, was to tell me that, damn, Lev, if only you had children. If you had children, this vacation would have meaning. You would show them how beautiful it is. Me seeing how beautiful it is, me being satisfied with it, and me doing it for myself, for them has no meaning. Like, my self-esteem is meaningless to those people. They just want others to see it because of them.
Yeah. Oh, what's up? What happened?
It seems Putin shut me down.
Oh my god.
Oh no. Anytime now FSB will run through my door. I dare say that I don't like Nietzsche. I will be put in jail for that.
Putin's coming for you, he heard you.
Well, it happens sometimes, but it never happened to me streaming.
Yeah.
Like once a while, like once 2 weeks, my connection just drops completely.
That's weird.
Are we still on air or what?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I'll just cut out all the section where I was waiting.
Okay, what I stopped at, I told you that the Russian culture is very anti self-esteem.
You were talking about going
Vacation.
on like a vacation, and then your parent was like, "Oh, but imagine if you had kids, you could show it to them. Wouldn't that be so much more meaningful?"
Yeah, and that's general attitudes, not of just my parents. By the way, I don't mean to badmouth my parents. They're just typical Russians in this point. All Russians mostly think about what I can do for my children or what I can do for my farm. The idea of selfishness here is unheard of.
Yeah.
There's not even a word for it. Like, there's no difference between egoism and selfishness. It's the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's not that much of a difference between those here, though. Like, I mean, I guess people use selfishness more in like a negative way, and egoism is more like a description of a type of philosophy. But also, one thing that I do find interesting and that I can kind of relate to is the whole thing that people can't conceptualize happiness as being meaningful, like your own personal happiness as being something meaningful. It's really strange to me. Like, it seems like I make this point to a lot of people and they just can't conceptualize it. Like, they're like, oh, but what happens like after you die if there's no God, and like the universe just continues and without you? And I mean, where's the meaning in that? How does your life have any meaning? And then I'm like, no, the happiness is what gives it meaning. And they just can't seem to wrap their head around it.
Well, they can't really think about living for themselves. Like,
Yeah.
when I say that I live for myself, well, they kind of look at me funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
They start implying or assuming a lot of things. Like, my colleague is like, but you can't live for yourself. You need to interact with other people. Those are two different things, you know. Living for myself doesn't mean that I'm gonna to like go to smoke Curacao, seclude myself on the island, build a wall around me, and eat mangoes all day. That's not life for myself.
Oh yeah, I mean it's weird how people try to justify altruism. They're like, oh, but we're part of society, and it's like, yeah, that's because society is good for us, because it's good for us. Like, why would if like I don't see any duty to sacrifice, but it just shows how unjustified this like morality is in their minds, because I mean it's just the only reason it's as strong as it is just because of like all the history with it, and just it's always how people have thought about morality, and it's always how it's been taught, and people can't seem to like break out of that mentality, because like now that I've thought about egoism like for a long time, and sort of integrated a lot of that into my subconscious, it like altruism doesn't even make any sense to me. Like the whole idea of like wanting to why would that ever possibly be the standard of value? I mean, because it makes me like my question would be like, oh, is it because it makes you happy? But then it's like, wait, that's egoism again. Shoot, I just keep coming back to egoism.
It's not also why, but how. How can you live for others when, like one passage Nietzsche also had is that in the end we don't love others, we love feelings that we have for those others. Now, even if you try to live for others, you end up judging your morality by your feelings about things. You still judge it by your standard. Altruism isn't only unjust, it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's only possible as a sacrifice of the good for bad. That's why every not literal but radical movement of altruism just comes up to the killing and sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like, that's why Pol Pot ended up doing that. That's why Holodomor happened, because they prioritized their food and wheat over the people, because they wanted to help like everybody. It doesn't matter that a lot of people starve to death.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that because they see how bad it was for everybody, and they think that that's still like against altruism because it's bad for most people. Kind of the utilitarian argument. I don't that's a tough one for me too, I guess. Separate, but you can't like hold such contradictions, I guess, like the whole idea that you can't like contradict yourself by saying, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good way to come about this. Well, how would you respond to that whole thing that a lot of people say with regards to like that's not actually altruism because it's bad for most people?
Well, they don't really say it to me much. Because you see, here in Russia, USSR is seen as something that was good for all people. But if somebody tells me that USSR was not real altruism because it hurt others, I'll ask, how else would you do it?
Yeah.
You have a finite country and you have one finite nomenclature that determines things. The only way to live altruistically here is to prioritize someone, and eventually you will run into a lot of problems with it.
Yeah.
For example, right now I'm working on a video about Czeslaw Milosz and George Orwell. I know Czeslaw Milosz isn't someone that's known in Western countries.
Yeah.
Like, Orwell famously wrote 1984.
Yep.
Czeslaw Milosz wrote The Captive Mind. It's a book about how in Soviet Union, usually arguments about Soviet Union against it go economically. Like, it doesn't work as a plan. There's no way you can unite all the Soviet Union, on and on it goes. Milosz goes from very different perspective. He explains how the structure of Soviet Union turns cultured people, writers, poets, into nothing more than a cog in the Soviet machine. He gives a lot of examples, like he takes 4 famous writers that were very famous before the World War II and after they became part of the Soviet nomenclature. And all of those examples, he shows how when they inputted into Soviet system, they turn from imaginative, interesting people with their own perspectives into the old same social realism.
Yeah, and I mean that's what has to happen under altruism too, because like the whole idea that like your individual purpose, your duty, your sort of what the government should prioritize is making sure that you as an individual give to society, make sure that you pursuing your own individual interest doesn't take away from society. And if that becomes a standard, then there's no reason not to like violate an individual's rights and like make them just into this non-individual sort of person without their own sort of values and just fitting into this larger culture, I guess.
You need to do it, because if you allow people to be their own thing, you will have genres in the literature.
Yeah.
You know that Soviet Union specifically forbidden certain types of literature because they were anti-socialist literature. They read whole books, whole passages, and told people to take this chapter out, change this sentence, because those are too individualistic. Imagine being a writer under that regime.
Yeah.
I would shut myself on the first book.
Oh yeah, that's terrible. Like you can't. There's no reason to ever write. There's no reason to ever do anything because you can't actually achieve your own values in the world.
Like in that book, Milosh exemplifies one person who, in the World War II, he had Jewish blood in him. So he was taken by Nazi Germany and thrown to, I don't know which camp specifically, but it was one of those that was saved by Americans. I don't know the name. So that person was a famously witty comedian with a lot of dark satire to him. After he was accepted by Soviet literature departments, they started slowly incrementing on his style, and even though they published his book against Nazi Germany, because it was very famous and it was very well written. It was very witty and it had a dark satire to it. In some passages, he just explains how you stopped caring about things when you were in camp. Like people get beaten and killed, and it doesn't bother you anymore because your life is on the line. So there was a famous passage there that he lost his love to philosophy and his respect to philosophy when he saw two philosophers fight for bread in the camp. So this dark satiristical person, when thrown into the Soviet Union, he stopped writing big books. He was told to change. He was told to just praise social realism. And he ended up just writing small articles where he just praised Stalin and hated on everybody else. It was easy hating on capitalists in Soviet Russia. You just use the same old patterns of thinking. And he ended up committing suicide. He just, Soviet ovens are gas-based. So if you put them on, they will just produce gas in your apartment endlessly. And he just did that, sat in the chair and died.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean it's such a shame what like a collectivistic mentality, what a collectivistic culture can do to a person.
Mayakovsky also shot himself.
Yeah,
and he was also a famous poet. So I'm making a video about it because in some passage of the book, Czeslaw Milosz explains very well. It's just comical how good he understands it. Just like Orwell understood why totalitarianism leads to shit in 1984. It's just comical how those people understand what their ideology leads to, but they still hold to it. Like Czeslaw Milosz explained how capitalism basically is indestructible. The moment you have a deficit in your system, let's say, for example, he goes through example of real life. Let's say that you have a house and your tubes in your toilet are broken. You need to wait for a plumber. But in Soviet system, you have to wait for a plumber for months at a time. Months, because there's not enough of them. People were taking their clothes and tying them over the tube. So it kind of still works, even though you're losing out the water. So what usually happened is that instead of waiting for a plumber one worker paid another worker to fix his tubes. That's a bit of resurrection of capitalism. At the same time, the money that worker got, he gave to his wife, who was buying excess clothing with that money and reselling it to people who didn't have clothing.
So I mean,
And
they still found a way to make capital. They still like people have to. There has to be some amount of capitalism, even when it's completely restricted. Because I mean, it's the same thing with that principle that Rand talks about. Like, you can't be a complete altruist. You have to have a little bit of egoism because you need to think about your own life to an extent if you want to survive. Like, the pure altruist just dies, just doesn't. Yeah, just sacrifices their entire life for other people, for the community, for the collective. And I guess it's the same thing with communism. You have to have a little bit of capitalism there just to survive, just to make sure that you're doing something so that a little bit of wealth gets produced.
like, for example, in Atlas Shrugged, she has a system like 20th Century Motors. You read Atlas Shrugged too, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I won't spoil anything. Spoiler, by the way, anybody who didn't read Atlas Shrugged. She had a 20th century company where they had equal pay for everybody else, and if you want a little more, you need to apply for it.
Yeah.
That's logical for a communist, but that's a fantasy that didn't happen in Soviet Russia. In Soviet Russia, it was completely the opposite. They forced people to work more to pay them a little more.
Yeah.
They tried to destroy, like, you can't be collective in Soviet Russia, because if you have a strong collective, they will rebel against you. So they used Stakhanovцы, the best workers, to destroy cohesion in the factory. They paid somebody more for more job. They incentivized them to work more. So you cannot be a communist in a communist country. That's not profitable either.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You need not only capitalist value system, you also need some market intrinsically, because the moment your grandiose plan fails at one place, it immediately puts a lot of lives at risk. Like, a lot of people died because they didn't get their plumbers in time.
Yeah.
Do you know how cold it gets in Russian winter?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if I didn't have heating right now at all, I would be sitting in 2 sweaters, even at +2. It's just impossible, and I'm very used to that. I used to live without heating at all, at -15.
Oh, no.
It's normal. So you just can't have full socialist system. It always will devolve into gray and black markets somewhere.
Did you grow up when Russia was still the Soviet Union?
No, I was born in 1992.
92.
A whole year after USSR died.
Oh, nice. A year after it died, the new objectivist intellectual that's going to restore Russia is born.
I don't call myself intellectual. Just some guy who likes to read.
Yeah.
I'm not really, like, I have a good opinion of myself, but I know that I'm not like a genius level. It takes time for me to understand Rand as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think,
like, after I became Nietzschean and I dropped Nietzsche, I became libertarian. That shows you that I'm not a genius.
Yeah. I mean,
libertarianism also didn't make much sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, before I discovered Rand, I guess politically I was definitely heading down the road towards anarcho-capitalism, because I was libertarian and I was like looking into all these like anarchist type thinkers and probably going to read Rothbard at some point, and then I discovered Rand, and I mean, that basically redirected my course.
I did read Rothbard. I read Rothbard, Hoppe, but just one book. Like, I don't think Hoppe is as bad as they portray him. I don't think that he himself is a racist. Like, in his book, he gives examples of racist systems. He didn't propose to create them.
Yeah.
He just says that, like, in our history, the best type of society that we can see that produces the most is white Protestant Christian families. To the extent, that's true. To the extent. He didn't say that we need to destroy every other type of society. He just said that historically those were the most productive. But then people read that, and a lot of pseudo-Hoppians turn it into white ethnostates.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, there were a lot of people in my, like, comment sections always talking about, read Hop. Yeah. But
Your comment section is cesspool of its own, but
terrible.
it's nothing new for me.
It's terrible.
Like when I went to every libertarian server, even Hoplu, like Hoplu gets a shout out for me, but even his server has racists in it.
Oh yeah, they're all over the internet. It's
Like white ethno state. Without white people, objectivism will never exist.
oh yeah, that's
Excuse me. Show me a clearly European objectivist. Find me one, please.
I mean, what do they consider Russians to be white people or no?
It depends from racist to racist.
Yeah,
Some
but I
tell
mean,
me that I'm not white any way, so I need to shut up.
uh,
Others say that why are you objectivist? It will lead to like destruction of your race. Maybe you know nothing about my race at
yeah,
all.
I mean, it was created by objectivism was created by a Jewish Russian lady, so
And like her Jewishness is, I don't know, kind of questionable. Like Russian Jews don't really look like Jews.
mm.
Like when you look at Rand, she just
Oh, you're cutting out a little
like,
bit.
when she's old, she looks like my grandma. All Russian women look alike.
Yeah.
They kind of look like me. So like, yeah, as I was saying, like, when I went to libertarianism, nationalism and ethno-nationalism was the best cure for me against libertarianism, because like if you tolerate this scum, what do I have to get here? And eventually, like I started reading Rand again and listening to her speeches, and there was one speech where she criticizes conservatives. I think it's called Requiem to Conservatives, something like that.
Yeah.
Like socialism versus communism. And then there she presents a very interesting point. Let me get my water. Her point is that conservatives kind of argue from fragility and sinful nature of man. So conservatives argue that we can't have dictatorship not because dictatorship itself is corrupt, not because humans are too good for dictatorship, but the other way around. Conservatives say that humans are too sinful to live under fascism and live peacefully. That it's human nature that will eventually lead them to conflict, and that's why they need liberty and capitalism.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the worldview of many libertarians too.
Yeah, I've always hated that argument. It's never really made sense to me because, like, if you don't, or if you're on the opposite side, you can just say, "Oh, let's just get in the right person then, someone who's a good person." Mm-hmm. It's so easy to combat, and I guess I don't know. It just shows like this deep pessimism of these people, and how can they defend liberty if they believe human nature is corrupt? Because what liberty does, or what freedom does, is leaves people free.
Well, and I don't believe that many of libertarians even want liberty. They want solution through liberty. That's a different thing. Like it started made sense to me at the same point. Like I kept thinking, why do I have to? Like every time I go to some libertarian server or interact with some libertarian, it seems that they have an agenda, and liberty is just a tool here. It never made sense to me. They kept saying that like liberty is not a goal in itself, but it is.
Yeah.
Liberty is the main thing. I can't have happiness without it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because the whole reason for government in general is just like to make it so that we can't use force in society and leave each human mind free to pursue his own life. Because I mean, to live, we need to be able to think for ourselves and keep the results of our actions. And yeah, so that kind of does seem like a sort of end in itself when it comes to government. It's not like some means to this further, like, I don't know, further goal that this person may have, this further like altruistic goal of where we want society to be. It seems like, yeah, I get that a lot of people seem to have this sort of like collective goal that they want to pursue.
And especially those covenant people, they think that covenants are a good solution because they address the issues of the whole group and have a function, a mechanism to disassociate with those who are not part of the group. So the covenant is kind of solution for them because it's voluntary, and it has the ability to dissolve those who are not agreeing with it. That's the whole concept of physical removal.
Mm.
Like people imagine that physical removal is like the whole community goes and kicks the communist out, but no, what they usually mean is that the whole community decides to never trade with this communist from the community. So he kind of get excluded and he has to move out.
Yeah.
The only point at which he removed is like imagine a free society living in some uninhabited island.
Mm-hmm.
They get a tourist who's a communist, and they kick him out because he's a communist. That's pretty much it. It somewhat makes sense, but then you figure on it. And when it was June 2019, when I just sat down and thought, like, what are my priorities? What they lead to? And I realized that even my vision of libertarianism leads to somewhat objectivist state.
Yeah.
Because I don't want competing securities.
Oh yeah, that's so incoherent. It's so, I don't know. I don't get how somebody can espouse that idea. It's just I can't. I don't know. I get a lot of the arguments. I just don't. I don't get it at all though. I don't like.
They require the whole reforming of people's minds, basically. Not really on epistemological level, but like yes, their arguments make sense, but only with people who actually believe all those arguments. Like arbitration, yes, arbitration can work, but what you do when someone says, "I don't care about that arbiter, I will just not do what he says."
Oh yeah.
You have to use force. Eventually, somebody has to use force in order to attain justice.
Yeah, and like, what does this arbiter like? What's the word I'm looking for? Like, or what sort of laws does he look for? Like, what does he look to? What document does he look to like say to make sure that these laws that he's enforcing are objective? It's just whatever the arbiter's whim is. It's not some like objective sort of rule of law. It's just whimsical, whatever people feel like at the moment.
Well, actually, he looks at the contracts, but he decides between the contracts too.
Yeah. So, but like, what standard does he decide this on?
There's no really check on the arbiter either. Like another arbiter, that won't really work.
Yeah, it just
like, eventually somebody will get fed up and just start shooting.
Yep. Yeah.
You need some kind of force to determine shit. Like I understand it. It will probably it can be very bad force because we see that all over our history.
Mm-hmm.
Like from times of Sparta, all the force that was determining judiciary was kind of bad force.
Yeah.
Although there were good examples like Medieval Ireland. Medieval Ireland was kind of anarchistic, but not really. It had a ring of elders that every year decided conflicts. But it's still government. Nobody was fighting elders. There wasn't a second ring of elders competing with them.
Yeah. You have to have some sort of objective sort of rule, like some way to say how we're going to use force. It can't just be for whatever arbitrary whims people feel.
Medieval Ireland only worked because everybody recognized the elders as the ultimate decision makers.
Yep.
They didn't have competition with 20 other elders who were recognized just as good as them.
Yeah.
That's the only way it works. The same in every state we see.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe in some unforeseeable future, people will slowly localize judiciary and turn to poly-judiciary movements, but I can't see it right now.
Yeah.
Not even in the 100 years.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that sort of thing working because like I don't know, like if it becomes super like down to the like super local level, then what about like conflicts between like people in different localities, and then it basically becomes like the sort of conflicts that you get into with different like people from other countries, which is just a mess.
And like how do you even build trust?
Yeah.
Like if you're a client of one security on one part of the planet and you go as a tourist to another, where's the trust in here? Do you need to pay to another security now? Like it's very complicated.
Yeah, yeah, and then I mean what we see when there's a sort of pocket of no sort of government enforcement of the law, what comes up is basically gang rule. There's different gangs that compete against each other and act to protect certain groups who have certain interests, and then it basically becomes gang warfare.
Like, I'm a big EVE Online player. EVE Online is MMORPG where you can claim space, like, as your own. What it turns into, there's no really arbitration there. There's just a war. They only agree to temporary alliances because it suits them.
Yeah.
They just never end in war. And it's a game where, like, resources are endless, literally endless. And they still fight over them like crazy. Even though if they strike alliance, they can prosper indefinitely.
I mean, do people ever try to play that game, like, not attacking a bunch of people and, like, trying to build and trade peacefully?
Yes, and they all got into giant wars because of it. Because if you have something, you have something to destroy, and that's fun. That's content.
Oh God.
There's famous, like, there's alliance there, triumvirate over the several wars, acquired a very good territory. It's basically they were sitting in a gold mine. You can mine it forever. It's one of the best territories in the game. And they had allies all over them.
Yeah.
They could they were a superpower. But they got tired of it. It's boring. So they attacked their own allies for fun. That's EVE Online for you.
Oh my
People
God.
attack each other for nothing at all.
I mean, I don't know. That it might get boring if you're just, like, sitting there and doing nothing in a game and not developing.
Yeah, but, like, you can fight without destroying each other. You can have, like, tournaments.
Yeah.
Like some people do. Why shouldn't you have, like, giant wars over nothing all the time?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But
Never made sense to me.
yeah, I mean,
even when I play Stellaris, like, it's a PvE game about space empires, I mostly play PvE because, like, I don't engage in wars. I don't want a war.
yeah.
I want funny, intricate things about, like, factions, politics, getting more food, renaming your ships, creating better ships, all that.
Yeah.
Like, something productive, not just, we're gonna fight.
Yeah.
I have that in Russia. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Like, I have people trying to beat me for having long hair. So kind of this. You said you're from USA?
Yeah.
How many like Polish and Russian people you have in USA? In your part?
I don't know that many.
You know any?
People. I know, like, I guess I know some. Like, from my hometown, I knew a few, like, Russian people. I think I knew a Polish person, but I don't. Yeah, there's not that many people from Poland or Russia that I know, at least.
Well, a lot of people migrate from Russia. Famously, last year there were more migrants to Germany than people born in Siberia. So more people left than people born. Our fertility is going down real fast. It's gonna be 1.4 by 2024.
Do you guys let in a lot of immigrants into Russia?
Some, but not a lot. Like, that depends what you mean, legally or illegally.
I don't know. What are, like, the general opinions about immigration in Russia? That's what I'm interested in.
That depends from where. Generally negative, but not because of any economic reasons. Not really of racist reasons, but because they're not Russians. Usually we get immigrants for, like, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, all those Eastern countries where people are like I have nothing against those people. I'm just saying that they're all small and kind of darker.
Yeah.
When I order KFC in Yandex Food, it's always some Mazambai Yanbanbai that brings it to me, and he's always a whole head smaller than I am. Like, aren't you afraid, mate? Like if I was a courier and I was like a whole head small, I'd be kind of afraid of my clients, I think. But like
Yeah.
immigration isn't a problem here. Mostly it's provincial people. Like provincial Russians are very bigoted about everything.
Yeah.
They don't even care what race you are. Like if you're a white Norwegian with a blonde hair, they'll still hate you
Mm.
because you're not Russian.
Very
They'll
like
have
nationalistic kind of then. Yeah.
yes, and very like unreasonable. Like
Uh,
everybody is out to get Russia. NATO wants to
man.
kick us.
Yeah.
We need to bring empire back. What the fuck? Like even nationalists here, they like when they discuss the future of Russia, they like, we don't want to be another Poland. Like, I do. I want to be another Poland. I don't want to be like some giant empire.
Yeah.
I want to prosper. That's
Yeah.
it. Can I have it? But they want to be some super force that like everybody is afraid of, and we're great. Do it for yourself.
Oh man, there's actually probably a decent amount of American people who think like that. There's a lot of, I guess, on the conservative side, there's a lot of nationalistic type people who want to like America to be a power in the world, and I mean that's not something that I feel that interested in. Like there's a lot of people who I talk to that are like, oh, China's catching up to us. They're gonna be the next world power, and it's like, who cares? Let's just prosper here. Let's just be free and not worry about the rest of the world.
Let us both be a power and we trade
Yeah.
with each other.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know how
I'm
that
good with
doesn't
that.
make sense to
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Like why I keep hearing stupid bullshit about how they will try to fuck with us. They can't
Yeah.
just trade with us. They will try to like take advantage of us. What advantage? We're trading. There's no advantage here.
Yeah, it's an advantage for both people because you're both deciding it's in your like it's better than what you're trading away, getting the thing in return.
We
Um,
both get in value. Not
yeah,
Russian people kind of think of trade as exploitation. Like
yeah,
Marx makes more sense for Russians because for our whole history, except Great Novgorod, we were fighting, not trading.
yeah.
Like, and we kept relying on slaves instead of trade.
Oh yeah. Back to one of your other points though. I think it's interesting to hear that perspective about how like Russians like are like kind of against everybody else. Like we're like Russian people because there's not really that sort of like American ethnicity identity that's that common because we're like such a big mix of a bunch of people. But I guess
I'm
there's
not
there's an
saying they're
extent to
ethnically Russian. They're not
yeah.
Russian in a sense of culture.
Mm,
Like a lot of even Russian nationalists will accept non-Russian ethnically people as Russians
mm,
if they're culturally appropriated. Let's say,
yeah.
like Russia accepted a lot of South African and Rwandan refugees.
Yeah.
Most people, aside from like weird looks, don't really have a problem with them.
Mm-hmm.
If they speak well and treat everybody fairly, they will be treated fairly as well.
Yeah.
And some people will even consider them to be like honorary Russian.
Hmm.
There's not much explicit racism here, just like implicit one,
Yeah.
where you like suspected of not being Russian if you're a different race.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess in America, I guess there's sort of a rise in like sort of focusing on race, but I still largely think, at least from my experience, people don't do that much. But I also grew up in a school that was like 50% white, like it was very diverse. Because
I never seen a black person until I was like 25
really,
in Russia. I mean, not like on TV. I saw them all the time, of course,
oh yeah,
but first-hand experience, I don't think. Maybe 21 when I went to college. We had
hmm.
exchange program, which is funny because it's the same exchange program that my future girlfriend was at the time, and
Oh yeah,
we possibly met there, but we never knew each other.
yeah,
So maybe when I was 23, I saw like one or two black people. That's it.
huh.
All
That's
other
that
ethnicities like Hispanics, you never see him here.
Really? That's completely different from me. Holy crap! Because um, I grew up in like a. I guess I grew up in South Dakota, and most people would think, "Oh, that's super white." There's just a bunch of white people there. But the city that I grew up in, well, I guess right in my neighborhood, there was like this sort of program for bringing over immigrants from Africa and like helping them assimilate, like, um, helping them become part of American culture. And I guess they put him right in my community, and like I just saw like black people every day, Hispanic people every day, all it was just part of life. I didn't really even think that much of it.
Well, I grew up in a very small village in
Yeah, village.
huh, northwest of Russia.
Mm.
It's usually very cold, like unexplainably cold, I can say.
Yeah.
It's minus 30 every winter, and the wind is very dry.
Oh, I hate
Like
wind.
there's no humidity there.
Mm.
Just you go out and your limbs stop responding little by little.
Oh no. Yeah,
It's so cold.
I think I can probably relate to that too, because I mean my area of the US is like known for being excessively cold and having very cold winters. Although it hasn't been bad this winter. I kind of moved a little south though, from South Dakota to Nebraska though, so it's been slightly better. But I think yeah, we'll get like very cold temperatures, like probably like -20 Celsius is
Negative 20, yeah, that's
yeah,
pretty cold.
yeah, that would have been like a
But that's
normal winter
typical
here.
winter for where I came.
Yeah.
That's all the time. If there's not minus 20 at the winter, it's considered to be,
Yeah.
that's a literal term, a woman winter. Woman's winter.
Women's winter. Oh man. God,
There's also a woman's summer, meaning that if October is warm, it's a woman's summer.
hmm.
Although it's more slur based, like bабье лето, meaning like I don't think you have a baba in English. Like it means a woman, but a little like disrespectful,
Mm.
like a thought summer. Not
Thought
even
summer
that.
or like bitch or
No, no, not insulting, but like it implies that women are weak and like warmth instead of cold.
uh
It's like a weak summer, weak
uh
womanly summer.
mm.
So for like you will never see a non-Slavic people in that village. Never.
Mm.
Like, there's no reason for them to go there. There's no population of them there ever.
Yeah.
They don't just go there. It's a small shitty village the size of I don't know 20 square miles probably.
Hmm.
Like if you show me a picture of one place in that city, I can tell you how to get to any other because I
Oh
was
wow.
everywhere there.
Oh wow. What was it like growing up in such a like a small town? How would you, like I feel like that'd be really boring.
Yes, but I was imaginative kid,
Uh
so we kept going to swamps and pretending to like role play as warriors and stuff.
oh yeah. That's fun.
You just have to think of something.
Yeah. That's
I had a
definitely
lot of friends,
hmm.
so it was not a problem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, when you're
Because
a little kid it's like really
right
easy
now
to
it would be boring as like you can't imagine. I don't want to go there ever.
yeah.
Like I like my family, but I can't stand my families for a long time period. They're so boring. And the life there is so repetitive and boring. They just
Yeah.
do the same exact thing for years on end.
Yeah.
But
A
if you
lot of
move to
people
some
live like
city
that.
like I'm right now, St. Petersburg, you
Yeah.
see like African people daily.
Hmm.
If I go to Subway right now, I will see at least one African man, sometimes working there.
Yeah.
There, it's normal. Hispanics very rarely, but sometimes you see them because they're tourists.
Mm.
And I don't know, it seems to be a stereotype everywhere. But if you see a Hispanic woman, you don't see one. You see like five at the same time,
Hmm.
and they all kind of like Slavs are very tall compared to tourists.
Yeah.
Like I'm six, like just six, I don't know, feet. I have no idea. Like we
Yeah.
use
Six.
centimeters.
Oh, how many centimeters are you? I can do a conversion.
183 centimeters.
183 centimeters. Let me see how
That's
many.
about 6 feet, I think.
Uh, I will look at. Wait,
I
hold up.
think.
Centimeters to feet. Hold up.
Maybe 5'11", I don't know.
183.
Hmm.
Yeah, just over 6 feet. So I'm
Hmm.
close to that. I'm a few inches shorter. I'm like 5'9".
Most people in Russia are taller than me.
Mm.
Like if you go to my village, pretty much everybody is taller than me, except my father. Like my granddad, who's 72, he's taller than me.
Oh
Like
man.
here,
So you're one of the short people in Russia.
shorter.
Yeah.
They're much shorter people than me, of course.
Yeah. I'm
Like
definitely shorter than
women, for
most people.
example, our girls are very short. Like I lived with three girls at one time. Like we rented an apartment with 3 rooms.
Yeah.
They all were shorter than me by 10, 20 centimeters.
Oh wow.
I have a colleague. She's a Android developer. She shorter than me by 35 centimeters. She's basically here.
Oh man.
She has, in order to see my face, she has to do this, and I always feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Like she goes to report that she fixed some problem, and she's like, "Hello, Lev, I fixed that bug you did."
Oh my god.
Like, okay.
That's always me though. I'm always all my friends are like like over 6 feet, and I'm like 5'9", and then it's like
I
it's
can imagine.
crazy.
All my friends were taller than me. All of them.
Yeah.
The best, the tallest we had, is also the smartest. He's now the sportiest out of us because I ended up with injury,
Mm.
and he migrated to New Zealand. He's now a senior developer. He's making 100K a year.
Oh wow, that's nice.
He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Like if he is watching this, Ivan Fayostov, hello, I'm proud of you. He also suffered from Russian culture. He's not really a philosophical type.
Yeah.
He doesn't read. He reads, but he doesn't read philosophic books like I did.
Yeah.
But the way that he behaves, he's very implicitly selfish. He thinks of himself. He studies. He makes sure that he's productive. He makes sure that he understands the topic, and he does his best to achieve something.
Yeah, I think that's how most people ultimately are. Like most people are not philosophical, and they implicitly like want to be happy and they want to work hard. Everyone tells them that to be super altruistic, but most people don't take that super seriously. And I mean that's one reason why I'm somewhat optimistic about people, and I don't fall into that whole like super pessimistic way of thinking there's no good people left in the world, and I still feel
Well,
like
the
there's a
problem
lot.
with me is that all good people usually leave Russia. Like all my friends, every single friend I have, migrated from Russia.
Hmm.
Last year, the last friend I had, a girl, migrated to
Yeah.
Black Mountain. I
Hmm.
have no friends left here.
Oh no. Bro, you gotta go out and make
I
some
have to
friends.
get the new ones.
Yeah. Go be the or you could be the prophet for objectivism in Russia. Spread
Yeah,
objectivism to Russia.
imagine that. I
Create
try to explain to people, and usually it goes nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Like,
It's
okay,
oh yeah, it's
and
bad.
that's where or
I've
they say some ridiculous shit.
oh yeah, that's always how it goes. You try to like explain the ethical system, or you like explain the politics system, and you're like, and then someone's like, oh, so you think that slavery should be legal and we shouldn't stop people from enslaving everyone else? It's like, no.
I had a dude tell me that he also kind of objectivist. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Well, I lied to my grandmother to get money from her. Have you been listening to me, pal?
Oh
I
my
feel like
god.
they just hear selfishness. Like they hear that I'm egoist, and they
Yeah.
imagine that like I constantly lie to people to get what I want.
Yeah.
That's not what I do. I have to keep telling my mother not to give me money.
Yeah, like that's the thing. If you like as an objectivist, like or like I felt bad one time when my dad just gave me money for like college or something like that. I felt like, what did I do? Like, why are you giving me this money? I didn't earn any of this money.
But sometimes it's somewhat rationalistic, actually, because philosophy doesn't imply that people should not help each other.
Yeah.
It's just that they should not do it out of sense of duty.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, my parents do exactly that.
Mm.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
For some reason, Mac went into maintenance state.
Mm.
I wasn't touching anything for too long.
Ah.
So my parents kind of give everybody in my family money for nothing. Like they're 58 at this point. Jesus, 58, yeah. My father is like 50 soon. And they never been outside of Russia. Never.
Hmm.
They lived for me, my brother, and my sister. And it doesn't even repay them. Like, I'm the only person in the family who actually makes money.
Yeah.
Of course, my parents do, but my sister doesn't, and my brother doesn't. They kind of parasite on them, not to give too much detail. Just, I kind of pity them because, man, if you had like two kids, like me and my brother, and you prioritized yourself, you could be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
You could just ditch all your altruistic morality and think about yourself finally.
Yeah.
Go somewhere you like, do something you like. Jesus.
Yeah.
Why is it has to be only me who does something I like?
Yeah. What do you do right now?
No, right now I just live.
Live?
With my condition, I can't walk too much. So right now I read, I play, and I study Python.
How do you make money then?
Well, I go to my work. Like
Yeah.
by not walking too much, I mean I can't work for hours on end. But walking for 2 hours straight is no problem.
Oh yeah. All right.
So in my work, I don't even need to walk. I sit right now and just type because I'm a coder and a
Yeah.
test engineer.
Oh, nice.
So have you ever used Netflix?
Yep.
Imagine that your job is to make sure every function that Netflix has is working properly. That's my job.
Ah, nice.
I just go to every application we got and test everything we can do. It usually breaks. Like, we're not as good as Netflix.
Yeah.
For example, just this Friday, I went to our smart TV application, the giant Tizen TV
Yeah.
with like 55 dimes.
Mm-hmm.
How you say it? Dooms. You know what I mean? And if you go to our main page, you select a collection, and both the collection and main page have overlapping content. Let's say both of them have Terminator, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When you select Terminator, it will select them twice. So the focus will double. You will never know which one you're activating.
Mm.
It tries to activate them both.
Hmm.
And problems like that keep appearing. And it's my job to find them all. So I don't need to move.
Yeah. So what sort of things do you like about that job?
Well, it's kind of the most objectivist job I can have. I need to conceptualize my work all the time. Like, I'm given an application on Android, let's say. I need to conceptualize the order in which I need to test everything. Mm-hmm. I need to make sure that I understand everything, how it works, and immerse myself in the functions.
Yeah.
So I need to come up with some kind of morality for testing, let's say. And it's always fascinating because you keep finding problems and you know why they occur, and you can explain how to fix them sometimes.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
It's just a small adventure in your hands. And I get paid for that.
Yeah.
It's one of the best jobs you can hold.
Yeah.
And the pay is above medium grade. I make about $1,100 a month. So it's like 13,000 annually. That's above pay grade in Russia, significantly, by like 17%.
Oh, nice.
I can afford this studio apartment that I live alone. Like, I pay 20,000 rubles for it monthly. And I can afford literally everything I want. Right now I want to go to a museum, I can choose any museum. I can go to any pub, any cafe.
Oh yeah, that's
Like
really nice.
my pay, like I can't, how you say it? I can't bitch about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad about my job except like sometimes it's a bit tedious.
Hmm.
You check the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
and you have to ignore some problems
Yeah.
because they're not that important.
Hmm. So like, did you have to like go to university to get that?
Yes, but I was wrong to go to university.
Yeah. What was your experience at university?
Oh, my experience in university is very bad because first it was a bad university, second I was a bad person.
Hmm.
At 21, I was a liar still. So I preferred to lie instead of working.
Hmm.
I was getting money from my family. But when my web of lies finally crashed down, I learned how to live properly.
Yeah.
Let's say that. Like I had to sell my blood to have food.
Ooh.
So in university, they didn't really teach you anything that you actually need in your job. Like, what do you plan to work as?
I'm gonna be an actuary. Yeah, if you know what that is. Well, I'm
Um,
basically gonna work for insurance companies and set insurance rates, basically.
mm. Imagine that instead of teaching you bookkeeping, they taught you how to use a calculator.
Hmm.
That's pretty much my university for you. One of my courses were for Linux. You know, I need Linux in some applications.
Yeah.
For example, many of servers ran on Linux. So if I
Yeah.
want to control some server, I need to know uh, how to use Linux terminal. Let's say that.
Hmm.
But instead of teaching us actual things that we need to know, they taught us how to like do very basic, unneeded things about that terminal. Like the first lab was open the terminal without using your mouse. Can you guess how you do that? Shift R. And like I looked at my teacher dumbfounded, pressed Shift R, and like, can I go now? Yeah, you can go home. That was the whole exercise.
Oh no.
How do you know that? I know that because I actually studied coding and I used Linux as my home platform for a long time because it's very customizable.
Yeah.
Like I made animated background. Like it was a big face of a lion, and on the surface I added animation that like a lightning was striking.
Mm.
It's very easy to do in Linux. You just need to. It's very easy. So my university was bad. I shouldn't go there. I should have gone to some trade school for
Hmm.
coding, like I did here in Petersburg.
Yeah.
Like they just teach you basics, teach you what you need to know, and give you like courses, not curses, courses on how does it apply in your work. So, for example, Python. I need to know Python because every time I got a problem in Android, it's usually written on Python or Java. So when I get logs, like let's take real example. Let's say that for some reason, when I go to subscription page, it shows me three different prices instead of one. I take the log file and I need to read in the. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, you kind of cut out. In the responses, I need to read what's going on. So it usually says that it asks for prices, sees them all, and for some reason it doesn't differentiate between them. I need to know what part of this code is wrong,
Mm.
and they explain how to check it. In my university, they did no such thing. They just gave us basics.
Ooh. Yeah.
It was very corrupt as well. Like my friend who went to New Zealand, like he was basically told that he can ditch every study as long as he pays them a certain sum every month.
Hmm. That's weird. Like, what do you?
That's not legal at all in Russia. It's very corrupt.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to go to army, you can just pay, and they will say that you have some kind of sickness. The more you pay
Do
to,
they force you to go to the military, or?
I didn't. I have I don't know, a flat feet, very flat feet.
Uh,
Like I don't need skis in the winter.
mm,
It's about as flat as this table.
oh.
So with this condition, I'm not susceptible. Like they don't take me.
Mm. But like
I'm
other
disqualified.
people, it's like forced to go. You're forced to go into the military. Oh dang.
My every friend had to go except one. He was a smart bunch. I won't tell how he do it. That's personal. So every other person, every my other friend went to military, and you have to go there. You either bribe somebody or you go there.
Mm.
It's usually a very bad experience. Like what happened is like my father looked at me like, Lev, you're not going to army. You don't have a time to waste there. Like I didn't know he respected me that much. And everybody who went there got out of some kind of trauma. Like one of my friends doesn't have all his teeth anymore.
Oh.
Another, you get beaten there all the time,
Mm.
and there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
Like
Are you guys even fighting any wars that you need a military for right now?
we fight with Syria, I think, or for Syria. I don't remember.
Mm.
I'm kind of like secluded from Russian news.
Oh
They're
yeah.
so garbage.
Yeah.
Like you listen to Russian news and it seems that the whole world wants to fuck us.
Mm.
The world doesn't care about us. Stop this propaganda.
Yeah.
Like, the
Russia's
whole world is not bent against us.
Russia's a lot weaker now than it used to be. I don't think it's as big of a world power as before.
Well, even Soviet Union wasn't really as big as Soviet power as people think. It was unable to fight Finland. Finland. It's like having three giant gopniks fighting me. I'm not very well of a fighter, and they still lost. How do you lose to Finland?
Yeah.
But I know how, because everything is like Rand famously said that you can't imagine how incompetent Russian bureaucracy is. That's true. You can't imagine how incompetent it is.
Dang, everyone talks about it in like in America. They talk about it like it's a like actual threat, like they were this actual threat that was super advanced and like, oh, they went to space before us and all those sort of things.
Do you know how do we got to space? Do you know that the Korolev, the guy who sent Gagarin to space, was beaten to do so? They broke his jaw to get him working. They kept threatening him. They kept fucking torturing him.
Yeah.
That's not advanced science. That's just force.
Yeah.
And that it wasn't really that good. It's just they flown around and didn't do crap about it. That's kind of how Soviet Union worked as a whole.
Yeah.
Like,
what a waste of money and time too. Like it's so weird how they would like, oh, they're trying to, I don't know, like they have this whole like, I don't know, they're spending all this money that could have been spent by like individuals on their own lives better, but they're just gonna do some like showy project. We're just gonna show the world how advanced we are, rather than just like
that's
letting people
always
do what they want.
backfires too. Because like in Russia they keep doing that too all the time. Like last time they tried to like show our new best tank Abrams, they failed to start an engine on parade. How do you do that? You don't test your engine? The hell. And in Soviet Union it was even worse. For example, they had a special how you say it, a quota on the amount of boats made. But the quota was undoable. Nobody needed that much boats. How they got around it, they started making bigger boats. The boats that didn't fit anywhere. So they ended up having useless amount of big boats that didn't really fit anywhere. But on the paper, it seems that they made more and heavier ones, so it passes.
Oh no.
That's all the time in Russia. And I'm pretty sure somebody was bribed to close his eyes on it.
Oh my god.
That's how it works. Because
It's
I know people who had to pay others to close their eyes on the fact that the person was healthy. Like, in order, you can bribe a person not to go in army here,
yeah.
and they kind of like they write down that you're very sick, and depends on the price. Like, you can like, the cheapest one is that you piss yourself and you sleep. Nobody wants that. You don't want in your army documents stating that, right? So most people buy something like severely broken bone or a flat feet.
Mm.
Flat feet is the most common because it's easiest to write down. Nobody would like grab your feet and look at it.
Yeah. Oh man.
Like,
Yeah,
like
Russia sounds so like it sounds exactly like what Rand describes in Atlas Shrugged, as like as the producers start leaving, and then all these dumbasses are forced to like fend for themselves and like try to find ways to produce, and it's just fails. It's so bad.
look, man, you remember we annexed Crimea, right?
What?
We took Crimea. We took Crimea,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Guess the amount of money they had to pour in Crimea to get a working bridge. A bridge.
How much?
3 million rubles. That's about how much that in dollars? That's about $500,000 for a bridge. That doesn't compute, and it still broke down.
Oh no.
What the hell? It took 3 million, and they keep doing that. Like not even a month ago in Nizhny Novgorod, the small Novgorod city, some bureaucrat woman took about 100,000 rubles to create a new playing space for children. What she created with that giant amount of money, like most people never, you can't imagine making that money in Russia, really. So what she did is she created a small park where they have something looking like a wooden coffin. You can't skateboard there. You can't jump there. And when it's winter, the snow gets between the plates. It's wood. Why do you place wood in Russian winter? It will rot in like 3 months. Jesus, why? It keeps happening. Nobody expects anything good in Russia. Let's say that. One reason I'm so jaded as a person.
It seems like such a pessimistic country. Like
Very.
Yeah.
People don't really expect good. They like good for them is the West. Like you can't really explain how the West sounds to a Russian. It's something that like we need to copy. That there are betters. Like there's no belief that someone good will come out of our midst. We don't like if Russia was a person, it would have a very low self-esteem, coupled with tyrannical self-assurance. Like it can't decide if it's the worst or literally the best.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Also, you said you read Dostoevsky. Don't you like see that in him as well? Like Raskolnikov, he can't decide if he's the vermin.
There's so much pessimism in those novels. It's terrible.
Raskolnikov can't decide if he's a vermin without any rights or literally the owner of the world.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Because he's like comparing himself to Napoleon and like saying, "Oh, I'm gonna just kill," or spoiler alert, kill this woman, just because like she's just standing in my way, and I'm just gonna do it and not feel bad about it. And then at the same time, he just feels like he's worthless and like no, he's super pessimistic about everything.
It's funny how Berserk copied that scene. You ever read Berserk?
I do not. I don't know who that is.
No. Berserk is a manga. So in Crime and Punishment, he goes to kill the old woman. Spoilers. Yeah. And he ends up killing Lisa as well, right?
Yep.
Another girl. In Berserk, there's a literal copy of that scene where like gods go to kill some uh, nobleman who stands in their way, and after killing him, he sees his son, who was a witness, and kills him too. It's also like very psychological.
Yeah.
He starts hating himself for that because he killed a helpless child.
Yeah, I was actually I was in a poetry class, and we were supposed to write like a poem about like something from like a different perspective, a perspective that wasn't written about, and I wrote that scene from Lizavetta's perspective. I thought that would be an interesting thing to do. It was like really psychological, and I don't know. I liked trying to like get into her head and like try to use like the clues like around how her characters developed to like develop that poem, I guess, and that perspective.
I wish I had those kinds of teachings in our school. In our schools, we wrote very. We wrote a little reviews on books. It's not really what child's supposed to do. We're not reviewers. We're not literally critics. And my teacher kept telling me that, Lev, you keep writing a critical review. I'm not asking you for that. Like, I didn't like a lot of Russian literature except for Griboyedov. Griboyedov wrote, how do you translate that? Woe of mind, like Горе от ума. It implies that somebody is very sad because he's smart. You see, hatred for good is a very literal thing in Russian culture. So the whole how you call it, play. It's a play. The whole play is about a dude who went traveling, who watched the world, who saw the world, and get back to Russia and start criticizing left and right, because there was a lot to criticize.
Yeah.
And everybody started hating him for that and loving the guy who just sits and did nothing. In the end, they conclude that the main character gone insane. And he has a speech where he's like, yeah, in your position, I'm of course insane. In this world, only insane can be smart.
Yeah.
That's a very good one.
That might be an interesting book to read. You should send me the name of that, or the author.
Sure. It's Griboyedov, and no, Max Stirner is not his brother. If you look at Griboyedov and Max Stirner, they look exactly the same. It's really funny.
I think I like a lot of like Russian literature for some reason, because I like Rand. I don't know. I like the way Dostoevsky writes. So I think I don't know.
There's a lot of good Russian literature too. I'm not saying that all Russian literature is bad. Like, there's a lot of good ones, like Gogol, Lomonosov, Lermontov not so much, Chekhov maybe. Griboyedov is the best in my opinion, even though he wrote one play and then he died in the Turkish War. Turks attacked Russia and he was in the council building at the time. They shot him. A poor guy.
What do you think about Tolstoy?
I don't dislike him even more than Dostoevsky. He's just so boring.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about him. My mom.
And his philosophy is.
My mom was reading Anna Karenina, and it took her like so many years to read that book.
Karenina.
It was just Is that how you say the name?
Karenina.
Karenina. I'm pronouncing it like it was Spanish there for a second.
Yeah.
I have a Spanish minor, so like when I pronounce foreign, like, or things that sound foreign, I always go to like a Spanish accent.
Russian language has very, very strong R. Like, I had to teach myself the soft R. Like, I kind of push my tongue a little too much. In Russia, we just do R. Russia, Россия, Скоробогатый. Like, we have a word for that, Раскатистый. Like, you don't have a word for that. A special type of R, like Scandinavians also use it a lot, like the hard R. Karenina supposed to be hard R. So Tolstoy, in his writings, he tries to criticize Nietzsche, but he fails.
Yeah, I've heard his
fails.
stuff is not very philosophical. It's like
It's naive. That's the
Naive.
best word. Like Tolstoy believes that if we just believe in God, we might just be happy with each other. We don't need markets. We don't need totalitarianism. We don't need socialism. We just need to live in a small village with each other and like each other. It's a childish philosophy.
Yeah.
At the same time, very like he writes as if he doesn't really believe it. Like it's just something he was told.
Yeah. What do you mean by like how he writes as if he doesn't believe it? Like what sort of things does he do?
It's the tone. The tone of the writing, as if he was already gave up. It should have happened this way, but actually, Russians are very melancholic and pessimistic.
Yeah.
Fatalism is the closest philosophy for us. It's mostly because of our weather. Like you know that in the cold winter, you get your brain gets a bit depressed.
Yeah.
Not much
depression. That's the term.
Well, imagine that you have cold winter for like 90% of your year.
Oh yeah.
And everybody around you is like that.
Oh.
And our political structure was always backwards and shitty. Like the only good person was Stolypin. Stolypin tried to privatize land because, like, imagine you have a patch of land, a square, and in old Russian system, the middle of a square can be owned by one person, and the part right next to it by another. So it was called Cherespolosye, meaning that the square is kind of partially owned by several dozen people. You can't really do anything there.
Yeah.
Your crops will keep getting intermingled. You don't have enough place, and you you will keep draining your resources too much. You have to keep using the same place.
Yeah, and it also that sort of thing kind of leads to that tragedy of the commons, where it's just like you don't have any incentive to, preserve it. I guess like you want to come and exploit it as much as possible, because if you don't do it, then everyone else is going to do it.
That's exactly what I was coming for. Like it kept exploiting exactly the same patch of land. Before that, there were good reforms by Alexander I, who literally gave people free land in Siberia, a big amount of land, but to one person. Those crops were very well maintained. Like, if Russians are good at anything, it's maintaining their land. That might give me hope. Like, if you privatize land in Russia, we can turn into a liberal society easily. There's nothing Russian value more than their land. Like, my father had to be told by a doctor not to work on his land. It's his land and he's gonna work it. God damn it.
Wait, can you guys grow crops in Siberia?
In Siberia, yes.
Really?
You just need to have a special Russia is very complicated in that way. Like there are.
Or like what sort of things do they grow there?
Potatoes, tomatoes, pickles, wheat, a lot of like dark wheat. I don't know how you call it. Like a brown. What you do brown bread from?
I don't know. I don't know enough about how bread is made.
Well, basically,
I just go to the grocery store.
Well, I don't even eat bread usually. I get fat very easily. Like I dropped a lot of kilograms after my surgery, but my face suffered. Like before my injury, my face was much less fatter. Like, I didn't have a second chin like I do. I had a very small chin, and the bone was visible. But after my injury, after I spent 3 months in bed, I got fatter, of course. So, what I was coming to, I know I said everything. Like Stolypin tried to privatize all the land. He was a very good person in this account, but they bombed his family to death. Communists did. I think I touched on that on the DTV show, but I was kind of bitter about it.
Yeah.
So basically, the Russians are very fatalistic, but we have hope in that we're very attached to our property.
Yeah.
So our culture can get better, but I don't see it much.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly a constant cycle. The moment we get better culture, all the good people leave.
Oh, yeah.
There's not much to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Like if right now I had a lot of money, let's say my salary doubled, the first thing I would do is try to migrate to some Caribbean island.
Yeah.
It's literally the first thing I would do. I would better be living with Caribbeans than Russians.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to explain anything to them.
Yeah.
Just so intermingled in the stereotypical beliefs of things. Like even like let's ditch objectivism. Like objectivism is very hard to explain. They just try to explain them small liberalism. It's still very hard. It doesn't solve anything. Like, you tell them about market economy and they're like, yeah, but how does the market you say work if government can't even clean our roads? What does that have to
Oh, you're cutting out.
do with anything? And how is it free market when government cleans your road? How is that a market failure?
Yeah.
And then you realize that everything is concrete bounded within them. If it's not pure socialism, if we don't have a Stalin threatening everybody, then it's capitalism. Like everything Putin does right now for those people is capitalism, even though he's creating government monopolies.
Yeah. That's similar to like because a lot of the Groypers, when I would talk to them, they'd talk about like, oh, you just want to have what we have now, this current neoliberal capitalistic system. It's like, we don't have capitalism. I said that I said that in the debate, and he was like, okay, and then just moved on. But these people don't.
That's usually what happens. The same with socialists. They're like, I know you mean capitalism as laissez-faire one, but I will ignore your definition anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we have conversation then?
Yeah. Or then they'll point to things like healthcare, like, oh, healthcare is doing really bad. Look at the cost of medicine right now. It's like, yeah, that's my point. You're explaining why government's bad.
That's one place where Russians don't point to because public healthcare here is atrocious.
Yeah.
Just atrocious. Like I have three fillings in my teeth. I had to redo all three of them in the past 2 years because I got them when I was a kid in a public clinic. They didn't know difference between a tooth decay and a tooth tooth infection that goes up to your roots. So they just thought they have tooth decay. They drilled it a little and put a filling in it. But they didn't check further. They didn't check my special coronary part of the teeth. So for 7 years, it was infected.
Oh.
That's why, after it started, how you say, aching. And when my stomatologist, dentist from a private clinic opened it up, he's like, what the hell is going on? Like, I opened your teeth, and there's green liquid pouring out. You have your teeth infected for years now. What's going on? Why are you not crawling around in pain? Turns out they took out my nerves, so I didn't feel anything. So my tooth was infected for several years, and that's normal in Russia. Our public doctors are complete buffoons who don't know what they're doing. Like my back injury, I fell down the stairs. Like it would imply that that's some injury, right? Because literally my spine connected with a concrete stair.
Yeah.
It was hurting really bad. Like it went from my spine to my right leg, all down to my toe. Like it was running pain, you know?
Yeah.
I'm no doctor, but I know that this implies a damage to my spinal disc. I immediately stopped doing any exercise because that would be very bad for it.
Yeah.
I went to a public traumatologist. Well, I'm stupid that way. I thought that they would just give me some prescription to, I don't know, neurologist. But he just kind of touched me a bit and like, it's just you hurt your spine and the pain in your leg is just because you also hurt your legs. Sure, sure. Thankfully, I was smart enough to go to another traumatologist. He sent me to a neurologist. She sent me to X-ray. She looked at it like, you need a neurosurgeon urgently, right now. Like my spine was like, there are like parts of a spine that aren't vertical but horizontal, small bones to it. Two of them were broken, and my spine shifted to the right.
Oh.
Applying pressure to my old disc adhesion. My disc adhesion was traumatized and twisted, almost slipped out. So it took my but I have insurance, so it costed me 0 rubles. But my insurance, by our law, has to work with public clinics, not private ones.
Yeah.
So it took them 2 months to give me surgery. By that time, I was limping. My right leg slowly stopped responding.
So they told you that you needed urgent care, and then they make you wait 2 months.
Yes, because private insurance has to work with public clinics.
Yeah.
You can't just choose private ones, and I can't afford them either.
Yeah.
So I had to wait. So in Russia, the topic of public medicine will give, like, nobody really believes that it will work. They think that, like, what we need to do is privatize it, but make sure that government controls the prices so they don't get too high. That's what Russians think. But everything else, a lot of people here don't know economics. Like,
yeah.
Also, like I touched on Czeslaw Milosz. He, just like Russians, has a weird affliction. Like, he thinks that his old Baltic village, where everybody was like a friend, and the trade was always like very fair trade. There were not many fraudsters. Usually, everybody knew each other. It was very localized market, and the trade was very fair there. So he thinks that was some kind of precursor to socialism. And Russians kind of think in the same way. They think that, do you hear me?
Yep.
They think that free market is when everybody like fucking with each other. Like when the company tries to take all your money away, that's free market. When everybody is living in their village trading freely, that's socialism somehow. Like capitalism is associated with everything evil, and everything that good that happens, that's socialism. So it's very hard to maintain and battle against it.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, yeah. It's interesting because a lot of people in America like to point to other countries' like public healthcare systems as if, yeah, all these other countries have it, and it's working fine. Why can't we have it too? Like it seems to work so well in these other countries, and I don't know.
Yeah,
it just seems like they have to be being evasive because it's like everything that I've heard makes it sound like these are not good healthcare systems.
They're not. Even in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, they keep cutting back on them and allowing private insurances. Like they work better because marginally the whole life in Denmark and Scandinavia is better. They have better systems overall, but it's not because of their being private. They would work at least just as good as be. Oh, I said private. I meant public. It's not because of them being public. It's because a lot of people trust each other, and a lot of doctors are very highly trained. It would work just as well as if it was private, maybe even better. That depends on the situation. I need to cough.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm kind of nervous about going into my field is if I decide to do something with like healthcare, the government's going to get super involved with that sort of thing. So I don't know. I kind of want to avoid government sort of things as much as possible when I start working insurance, but we'll see. We'll see what happens because people hate insurance and it's terrible.
Well, there are libertarian movements that want to solve everything by insurance.
Yeah.
Actually,
No,
they think
I'm
that
a
if
big
we
fan of
like,
insurance. I think
I'm
insurance can
not
be good
knowledgeable.
for what?
I'm not knowledgeable about it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I have medical insurance, and so far I'm very grateful to them.
mhm. Yeah, for sure, because you're basically just paying to like eliminate risk in the long term. You're just paying these companies to stop the whole the random events that can happen in life. You're essentially I don't know. It's like similar to for some reason I think it's like similar to the like benevolent universe premise. So, because you're essentially like making it so that random events can't come into your life and basically affect you and make your life super negative. You're kind of eliminating this randomness from life and making it so that I guess random negative things don't come in and affect you. Like that's kind of that's how I think it's somewhat related to like the benevolent universe premise.
Well, for me personally, like a lot of people who use insurance, they have attitude that it's trying to fool them, to fraud them.
Mm.
Like when I suggest that we should not have a government pension system and instead have insurance instead of pensions, they look at me like, what a naive fool. He thinks private companies will give him money if he gives them money. And then our government stops paying pensions. Okay, I told you. And the same is like I pay for medical insurance. So far, they helped me cure my thumb. I broke dislocated my thumb on my boxing, back, and all my teeth. I haven't paid a penny for it. Okay, I paid
That's
like
nice.
200 rubles for X-ray check for my teeth, but that was extra.
Yeah.
And I was extra dumb that day. You see, my frontal teeth started aching,
Yeah.
and I listened to advice to take a warming paste on it.
Mm.
What I didn't know is that because of cold weather, my infected tooth started inflating, and I applied a warming paste on it. I woke up with half of my face twice bigger than another half.
Oh no.
They had to cut open my gums to disinfect it.
Oh no. That's terrible.
And I paid like 200 rubles to have my tooth X-rayed because it wasn't covered by insurance.
Mm.
It only covers if like different types of tooth decay apply, not infection. But 200 rubles is like what, $3? That's nothing to me. I make about 80,000 rubles a month. That's nothing. So even if I have to pay a little, it's much better than public system.
Yeah.
So insurance can be trusted by me, I know it, but my colleagues kind of act as if it's trying to fuck with them all the time. Like literally my friend who works with me, she's like, they never answer me, and every time I use them, I need to pay a little for something. They're trying to fuck with me.
I mean, you should have to pay for something if you're going to use something. I mean, I don't know. There's so much entitlement with people too. They feel like they're just entitled to someone's service for like nothing, basically.
Well, it's also people here who like, I wasn't born to a life like I live right now. Like right now, if I want to do something, I need to wait a little, and I can do anything. Like my vacation to Curacao will cost me about $3,000, but I can't afford it. Not easily, but I can. In my youth, I could barely afford any food. Like, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I had to work for it. But people who I interact were mostly born in the families that collectively make much more than I myself make.
Mm.
And they also make more than I do. For example, that girl I just spoke about has her own apartment in St. Petersburg. She owns it. That's very costly. That's like 3.5 million rubles.
Oh wow.
Like this one that I live in costed the landlord about 2 million
Hmm.
because it's in a very good place and it's very well made. So those people are kind of rich and they expect
Yeah.
themselves to a certain standard. So they expect their insurance to ask nothing of them. Like, I pay you, therefore you cover everything.
Hmm.
That's kind of the attitude.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So it's also that they don't have any experience of the market. People don't understand what the market is in Russia.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, here people don't really understand the market that well either. I don't know, just half the time when you talk to somebody about anything economic related, there's just no understanding of how stuff works and just the fallacies that people go into. It just, yeah. Like
Not
when
even just economics, but culturally, what they imply. Go
yeah.
on.
Yeah, and I don't know, especially like with when I was talking with Patrick Casey in that debate, I at one point said, "You don't understand economics." Holy crap! Like, because it was like I don't even remember what he specifically said, but or oh no, yeah, we were talking about immigration, and then he would point out like, oh, what about like this one STEM worker or this group of STEM workers that like couldn't get a certain job because some immigrant came in, and then he just doesn't look beyond that. He looks at this sort of concrete example of something and doesn't look at how this like leads to more economic growth and more jobs for everybody. And basically, I would point to stats that said that no like immigrants coming in does not affect the overall number of American jobs. But he would say, but you just said that these people lost this job over here. But I'm like, no, I'm talking about the actual whole picture. I'm talking about actual economics here, not just like one little job.
When people lose the job, they don't go to live under a bridge.
Yeah,
If tomorrow I'm fired by my current company, I know at least four that I can go to,
yeah, for sure.
and they will fucking take me with my leg, like my leg first.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
when
know
and
how
when you
you
have
say it.
and when we have more people here too, like there's going to be more people, and when the market's freer too, there's going to be more people who decide to start a business and they'll need labor. Like there's always going to be more people who need labor than there are laborers. I think some people
Like when,
think it's the opposite direction, but that's not true in a capitalistic system.
well, also with immigrants, they sometimes bring specific types of jobs. Like, what happened in Rwanda, yeah? The genocide.
Genocide, yep.
Russia accepted about 30,000 Rwandan immigrants.
Hmm.
Like, being Rwandans, they all look very much alike. They're all pretty tall, they have very curly hair, and they're black, yeah?
Hmm.
What that implies is that there's a lot of market now to sell them specific products.
Mm.
There's a whole the whole sector of market that never existed before, of buying special products for African hair and
Oh
selling
yeah,
it
yeah.
to newcoming immigrants. It never existed in Russia because Russian hair is pretty simple. It's straight and a bit curly.
Hmm.
It doesn't need much work to do anything with it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Rwandan hair, god damn it!
Hmm.
Like, I know a
They
Rwandan
have to
girl.
like
She has. Well,
yeah, like I know a lot of friends they'll have to like pick it, and then some people wear like do rags so that they get waves and different things like that.
like she has the type of hair. I was educated on that. It's
Hmm.
4C. It's like so curvy. It looks like a spring.
Hmm.
If you pull it, you have a you have to pull it a lot to make it straight. It's like a
Ah.
spring. It goes back. So what she does to brush it, like when I brush it, I just take a small brush and I just brush it.
Yep.
I don't have any problems. For her, that doesn't work. She breaks those things. It's too thick and too strong. She
Ah.
takes a special pick that's like completely straight pick. And she just stabs her head with it.
Yep. Yep. That's what.
When I first saw it, I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, they just do. They just pick it. Yeah, I've seen that before.
And now people have to have a whole sector to sell them picks, mousses, new shampoo, all that.
Hmm.
And those people themselves also, most of them started working in modeling. And now there's a sector of, like, how you say it correctly, not ebony, of course, but like dark skin models.
Mm.
There's a new sector in that. They started making special, like, they have their own religion and they sell like dream catchers and all that things. New people always bring something new with them that has demand and supply. And because they sometimes also look different, they can bring special types of like aesthetic to your culture.
Yeah.
Usually migrants, if they're not like violent people, of course, they are benefit to your country. For example, most of those Rwandans I know are now either business owners or models. They usually like if they own a business, it's still business and modeling, like underwear and all that. And they have quite imaginative type of it. So it sells, it grows economy, it grows interaction between people. So it's a benefit for everyone.
Yeah.
But what people tend to see is not like they imagine those Rwandans move in and they form a community within like Moscow and just sit there doing nothing. That's how that happens. Although in Russia we don't have welfare, like at all. If you try to survive on Russian welfare, you'll die.
Oh, that's interesting because they used to be communists. It's weird that they have like a very small welfare state now.
We had no welfare state in the USSR either. You weren't paid without the work. If you didn't have a job, you were punished. You were taxed, and there was a bachelor tax too. If you had no jobs and no kids, you had to pay government for it. Sucks to be you, yeah?
Yeah.
It would suck to be me as well. I have no kids.
Yeah.
So I would be paying a tax because I have no kids. Although if I had kids, they promised to give me a free apartment. Yeah, sure. So in Russia right now, we have no welfare state to speak of. Like if you're unemployed, you get 5,000 rubles a month. That's barely enough to survive for a week.
Yeah.
So those people, those Rwandans who were accepted, they had to either integrate by a market system or leave. For example, South Africans that were accepted last year, they mostly left to Germany because they couldn't find any jobs here. Well, of course, you accepted them in Siberia.
Well, I mean that's how America should work too. That would make our immigration so much better. That would solve most of the problems with immigration.
Yeah, if you didn't have any welfare, there will be migrants who move there for a good reason.
Yeah.
Or if they happen to be refugees, they will have a good reason to try and find a niche. Well, like those Rwandans barely, like they basically have nowhere to go. Like in their own country, they hacked with machetes for fuck's sake. And in any other country, they don't really want it. You need to hear like the interesting thing is how they learn Russian.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea that African languages are so okay with Russian. The hardest thing for most Westerners to learn is the sound ts. Ts. You Westerners try to like s or you don't understand what the hell I'm doing. Africans do it even better than I do. They're like they do too deep of but other than that,
yeah,
most Rwandans and Africans I know speak very good Russian. They kind of bad with times. Like we have, how you say it. Basically, in Russia there's past, present, and future. You have like past, present, future, and all that. All those intermediates. We don't. And as I was told, for Zulu culture, they don't really have a distinction between relative present and past present. So if it happened like 12 hours ago, it's kind of present, not past.
Oh, huh. That's interesting. I think I've looked into a little bit of like linguistical stuff, like videos, and there's a lot of interesting ways that people talk about time.
Yeah, that time is a very weird concept. Like
Yeah.
for me as a Russian, learning English time was very confusing. What do you mean past present? Those are two different things.
Hmm.
Oh, although when you practice a lot, like most Russians when they learn English, they don't have a lot of practice. They just learn it on paper. They're book smart in English.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I interact with English speakers a lot. Like if
Hmm.
you give me a written test, I will probably suck at it.
Yeah.
But speaking, I can speak to anybody.
Hmm.
I can talk to Spanish people because like I tried learning Spanish. I understand, but excuse me, but I cannot speak Spanish really.
Ah.
Like, not writing, reading Spanish is okay.
Hmm.
Speaking isn't. Like
Yeah.
I wonder
Spanish.
who.
I like Spanish. Spanish is that's the only other language that I know. It's
Well, in Russia, you always taught English from your child, from like kindergarten.
yeah. In a lot of other countries, they teach a lot of other languages, but America, it's like, no, we're only learning English, and we don't teach you guys any other language. So, yeah.
You know that in South Africa you have 11 official languages. 11.
Do
Like
they?
it's Zulu, Xhosa. I managed to do it right. Xhosa. Okay.
Do they all know
Uh,
like all those languages down there?
no, like it's differs from place to place, as I was
Uh,
told. Like if you go to Durban, you mostly know English, Zulu, and Xhosa. If you go to like Johannesburg, a lot of people speak Afrikaans. Of course, I know nothing about it.
yeah.
It's just that I spoke with a lot of immigrants,
Ah.
mostly Rwandans.
Mm,
Rwandans, they're their own thing. Like tribalism there is cuckoo.
yeah. Oh
Like
yeah,
they
they had
show
a whole
me.
like genocide of different groups of
Mhm.
people. Yeah, Yeah, that doesn't sound like a very individualistic country.
They show me Tutsi, the tribe, and I don't remember the second tribe. Like they show me their native dresses. They're exactly the same. Like they have different hats somewhat, but so what? You went to genocide over a hat? Jesus fuck! And it
Oh
was
man.
for a long like. I don't mean to like mock them for it because it was a
Yeah.
tragedy, of course, but it's kind of stupid. Like
Oh yeah.
the same happened in Russia too. In our in early Russian history, Olga burned people for living on the trees. What do you care?
What?
They lived on they lived on the trees, and that was heresy. So they burned them.
What?
Yes, that's my reaction too. And in Rwanda, it was over time. Like all the media, all the government media was telling people how this other tribe is evil and how we need to
Hmm.
find a solution for them. Jesus.
Oh man.
That's why all those gropers and all those racists in libertarian movements always like scared me.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to lead to? If you have the world of different cultures, like let's say German Covenant living next to Xhosa Covenant, you think they're going to live peacefully? My ass.
Yeah.
They're going to fight eventually.
Yeah.
It's
No, these
inevitable.
they don't see past like the moment. They don't see long term. They don't see what their ideas lead to. That's the biggest problem with these people. They're so perceptual. They're so anti-intellectual. It's very explicit in the way that they talk and the way they think about things.
Both in racist right and racist left. Like there's a post-colonial feminism that believes that race mixing is wrong, but not because it dissolves white race, but precisely the opposite, because it brings white genes into the people of color.
Uh, Colonizing the genetic pool.
Yes, you like caught it exactly.
Oh my
Even
god.
I didn't conceptualize it as well as you did.
Oh my god. That's so irrational.
Like they kept telling me that if we allow race mixing, then all the people of color will drown in the sea of whiteness. Like, what? Are you aware whites are like 20% of the world population?
Oh my
We
god.
will end up brown if anything,
Yeah.
not white. And it's so just collective. Like, why they kept telling me that's like we need to live for our community, not for your selfish ways. Like for colored community,
Mm.
and that we have genetic claim to our lands.
Yeah.
What? Just because your ancestors were born on some patch of land, you don't have a genetic claim to it.
Yeah.
It's your property, sure, but not because of your genes. Jesus, like
Yeah. You know what was a funny thing that I read in some of my comments? There were some people that were like saying like, "Oh, you just want to see a bunch of chestnut colored people in the world." But like, I mean, those are those are the most attractive people too though. Like some of the most attractive women are like the middle like colored, like chestnut colored people. Like all the white people try to get tan, they try to become darker, and all the super dark people try to become lighter. So I mean,
I
it's not
googled
some
chestnut.
disgusting. Oh, chestnut, that color.
I googled it.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that's a color.
Oh, it's
For
it's
me, it,
it's it's basically like a mixture between white and black, like somewhere in the middle.
for me, it looks brown.
Yeah. Oh, it's yeah. I mean, it's just. Did you see the nut or the color?
Yes, yes, the nut.
Uh yeah. I mean, yeah,
The nut. Like I don't know. Yeah, most of the models I adore look like that.
yeah.
Fuck, my ex is kind of that color.
Uh
Like, by the way, that's how I found Curacao too, like the place I want to go to vacation. I
yeah.
watched a lot of models, and they were too pretty. And I looked
Yeah.
at where they're from. What is this little island? Also, it's written Curasu, and like a Curacao. No, it's Curacao.
Mm.
Yeah, chestnut women, if that's not racist, are you pretty?
I mean, I don't think it's racist. Maybe someone would say that, but hey, man, I like all colors of women.
Well, I don't on like. I know that with my attitude, people think that I only like brown women. It's not true.
Yeah. No,
Like,
for sure.
I know I like all type of women, but the more tanned they are, the more like attraction I feel towards them. I'm a very visual creature.
Mm. I don't know. I'm just attracted to women with good ideas.
Well, that too. Although my ex was a Milton Friedman fan.
uh I mean, at least she somewhat gets economics.
Yeah, she gets economics good. I'm just saying that like she believed all that humans aren't really fit for perfect capitalism.
Mm.
That the problem is that we start trying to fraud each other, and we need a
Oh,
lot of protection against that.
yeah.
Kind of malevolent universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, at least like she's Zulu, and I was told that all of them are socialists.
Uh,
When you speak to alt-right people, they're dead sure that every black and brown person is
oh yeah,
socialists.
no, there's a lot of foreign people that aren't socialists. Like I don't know, like the ones I think there's probably a good chunk of them that are, but there's like some of the most capitalistic, most free market people that I meet are not from America.
Well, I didn't really speak about economics with other immigrants I spoke with, but I don't believe they're socialists.
Yeah,
There's something about socialists that you can tell.
yeah,
They're a bit bitter and evasive. Like they
mm,
think the whole world is set against them.
mm.
Like I know people who reference their employers as their owners, like my slave owner.
Oh,
You see, work and slave in Russia have the same core word.
hmm,
Like you say
that's weird.
rabota, it comes from rab, slave.
Oh, that's a
Yeah,
really backwards way of thinking.
yeah. Although it's no, like the interpretation of rab as a slave is only recent,
Uh,
somewhat. Like originally, rabotnik was holop, the guy who just works for a living.
mm,
But yeah, even in a language, there's no love for capitalism in Russia.
yeah. I mean, Russia basically just switched right from like serfdom to communism, so it never really had like free work, or working like not free work, but like working freely, I guess, like doing what you want to with your life.
The closest to a liberal system we have is ancient Great Novgorod. It was a port city that basically like about as free as the Roman Empire. Not as well structured as Republic, but slavery wasn't a giant part of it. It's mostly a trade with surrounding cultures. Like we even enslaved ourselves. We didn't enslave some other people. Our slaves were other Russians. Like, for example, black slaves were extremely rare and extremely expensive. If you had a black slave, he was usually treated as a loyalty, pretty much. He was still a slave, but he was well fed, well looked after, and shown to everybody as a exotic thing. And even our best poet, Pushkin, one of his ancestors is black.
Oh.
He's a Maver.
Huh.
He's even lived like a rapper. He was like the first Russian rapper. He lived his life in he was rich, had a lot of money, meaning a lot of gold.
Yeah.
He kept teasing people with his poetry. Like he famously wrote that freedom will come when we hang the last Tsar with the guts of the last priest. And he kept teasing other people with his poetry, like a Frenchman, and he died on a shot. He was shagging some girl, and she had a French beta orbiter. And Pushkin kept dissing him wittingly. And they had a duel where Pushkin was shot to death.
He is the inspiration for American rap culture. Amazing.
Yeah. And he looks black too. Like Google nice. Pushkin.
Oh man. Was he on drugs too or no? If he was, he'd be the ideal American rapper.
Wait, rappers are always on drugs? I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
Why? I know that Snoop Dogg takes weed, but
yeah. Well,
don't they like?
Especially now. Like, do you know who Juice WRLD is?
Nah. Oh, I don't follow rap culture though.
He was a really popular rapper and he basically overdosed on lean because he was basically, what happened was he was on a plane. He had a bunch of marijuana, a bunch of lean, a bunch of drugs, and they were gonna land, and the police were gonna be there when they landed. So he was like, "Oh shoot, I just have to chug some of this. I just have to chug some of this lean before we land, so that they don't see all of it." And then when he got out of the plane, he had a seizure and died. So
why didn't he throw it into the toilet?
I don't know. He had to get the high, you know. I don't know.
Why do you have to get a high when you know police is after you?
I don't know, man. I can't speak to what happened. That's just what I heard too. That might not even be the actual.
Oh, that happens in rock culture too. Like I'm more into metal and heavy metal, and that happens in heavy metal a lot too. Yeah. Like Slipknot, one of my favorite childhood bands.
Yeah.
Not 2 years ago, their bass guitarist died of overdose. Well, he looked like it. Like on most concerts, he was the one least active. He looked like he was high all the time.
Oh yeah, that's how a lot of people are. I mean, it's just that's a symbol of the culture too. Just how popular this kind of stuff is among like the popular people, like among rappers. Just like because like Juice WRLD just would sing about being depressed and getting high to numb his pain. That would be like the whole song, and people loved it. I mean, he's a good artist. I like his music. There's like good vibes that I get from it. There's a lot of good stuff I get from it. But the music, the content of the music is so depressing, and it's so empty. It's just, I don't know. It makes life feel meaningless.
Like when it comes to music, I can't listen to rap at all. Like even Raka's rap. Like Raka, no offense, but music-wise, that's boring.
Are you saying Raka's music's nihilistic filth?
No, I'm not saying that. Like his lyrics are funny and witty. I give him that. But music-wise, it's just boring rap. It's the same. Like maybe it's just not my taste. Like
Yeah,
I listen to
I
Iron
believe that
Maiden,
quite a bit.
Judas Priest, Ice Turf.
Mm. I don't know.
Like
That's
to be
how
fair,
I feel about a lot of rock music. It all sounds similar to me, but
well, somewhat is similar. Like if you listen to black metal, it's
yeah.
mostly just boring tremolo.
Mm.
But there are good groups like Judas Priest, Iron
Mm.
Maiden, Ice Turf. They're very diverse,
Uh,
and I think there needs to be like you need to accustom yourself to special type of music. Like I try listen to rap, but like, I try to like catch myself, like hook myself with it by something. Like Megan
yeah.
Stallion.
Oh, Megan the Stallion. Yeah.
Like at least I can visually appreciate her. Like and I try to listen to her music, and it's just her singing about like penis.
Oh yeah. No, that you're listening to some not very good rap.
Like
I
her
like
rap is all about dick.
yeah. Oh
What the
yeah. No,
hell?
it's terrible. I cannot imagine like listening to that and be like, yeah.
I know girls who listen to that and sing
Oh my
along.
god. Yeah, I could not imagine myself chilling in the car just singing along to that sort of shit.
Damn, I can't imagine listening to that in front of people.
Oh yeah, no.
Oh yeah, this is the song about her riding a dick.
Oh.
Very imaginative.
Imagine you're just like driving in your car and like, or like you're with your parents. You just connect to the aux cord and she comes on.
I had enough problems with my parents thinking I'm going to be a drug addict.
Oh my god.
Like I listen to Iron Maiden, therefore I'm going to be a drug addict.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
they're not even like Iron Maiden never been seen taking drugs. I think.
Mm.
I hope. Like,
Yeah, I think
I myself, I never even tried weed.
Mm.
I don't know anything like. The closest to any drug I get is DMAA. Don't confuse it with MDMA. Those are two different substances.
Yeah. MDMA, is that ecstasy or no?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
ecstasy.
ecstasy.
But
What's it?
DMAA is a substance for sport use.
Oh,
It gives
like
you
a
small
steroid?
harm. No, not a steroid. It doesn't have muscle growth functions. It's an energy drink, basically.
Uh,
It's very, it's weird. Like I don't recommend anyone using it.
mm,
It gets you in a very dry mood, like disemotional.
mm,
Like you don't really feel shit.
yeah.
Like you become a robot if you take it a lot.
Oh.
But it helps you concentrate tremendously. Like when I was going to gym
Oh,
and
that sounds.
bench press.
Yeah, that sounds similar to like caffeine, or or caffeine is like as like a not super effective one, or like Adderall being like the extreme to that sort of thing.
Yeah, DMAA is a bit like caffeine, but you're not supposed to take them together, by the way. Like
Ah.
pre-workouts for gym, like all those like
Oh yeah.
Matt Spartan, God of War, all those pre-workout drinks.
Mm.
They usually have either DMAA, listed as methotrexidine, or they have Raivolfia vomitoria. That's also a nerve stimulant.
Mm.
You can tell, like, if you take pre-workout and you start itching, it probably has Raivolfia.
Hmm.
So,
Wait, isn't
like,
that that's like is that like the roofie drug, or no? Is that what is that drug? Because that wait, what was that drug that you
that's
said?
not a drug at all.
Oh no, it's not.
It's just like I said, the closest I go to the drugs
Uh,
is using pre-workout
yeah,
supplements.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
But
I thought I recognized the name of something that you said was in there, but I guess I didn't.
no, like I never tried ecstasy, LSD,
Yeah.
weed, nothing.
Mm.
I tried a lot of alcohol, like liquor,
Yeah.
rum, not rum, liquor, rum, absinthe. My favorite is absinthe,
Mm.
but not no drugs. And I
Yeah.
don't really drink much either.
Mm. For sure.
Like I
Yeah.
don't have, an,
You don't want that stuff to get mess you up too much.
I don't have an addictive personality. It doesn't really like. I go to pub, I drink like 3 or 4 cocktails, and I'm okay for several months. I don't want to go back. I
Yeah.
don't need them. It's just something tasty that I like. It's like KFC for me.
Mm. For sure.
By the way, when you said about chestnuts. If I send you a message in this Google Hangout, will anyone see it? That doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, it's an Instagram link, but
Yeah.
everybody saw it. But
it doesn't matter. It's safe for work. It's just an Instagram model, and that's pretty much my ideal in women. You reminded me of her. That's a chestnut color, right?
I'll open it and then go. I'll keep it on the Hangout call. I'll put it in a different tab. Oh wait, why is it doing that?
No, if you open another tab, you just see the tab. You don't nobody else sees it.
Yeah, but it didn't send me to the page. But
seriously, what did it do?
It said redirect notice. The previous page is sending you to www.instagram.com/whatever. If you don't want to visit this page, you can return to the previous page.
Okay, then don't. You'll close the Hangout then. Okay, I'll send it you to Discord.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we can think of a topic because I'm out.
You're out of topics?
I told you my whole life, mate.
Yeah. Oh, you were in the Charles 2 Discord server for a little bit, for like a few seconds before you got kicked out again. What
I said ass. I said ass.
Nice.
And I didn't really mean it as something bad. Charles 2 famously joked about him, I like women with big asses.
Yeah.
And I went to that server and just wanted to make a funny entrance. I didn't mean to troll anybody. I didn't mean to insult anybody. I just I can deduce that by inductive reasoning that Charles probably likes not any ass but African ass, and I wanted to make joke about that, and I just was banned immediately.
Oh my god. Oh man, but he did post something on Twitter about that, didn't he? Hold up, let me see if I can pull that up. Didn't he have this Twitter post where he was joking about that?
Charles, yes, but it wasn't Charles who banned me, of course.
Yeah.
It was the person you previously spoke with.
Oh yeah. Hold on, let me see if I can find that. Let me see if I can find the actual thing. Yeah, I mean that's how I figured out who that dude was, because I asked him why you got banned, and then we started talking about Charles, and then I was like, oh, I'll have him on to talk to him about this a little bit.
Well, Charles, I actually like Charles. When it comes to whole Charles Rocca debacle, I don't really know. It seems Charles behaved like an ass.
I think Charles was hypocritical in that whole event.
Yeah, it seems like it, because first of all, his point about drinking and defense of people trying to defend him doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If
he's in a bad situation, by the same logic, I should not doing anything. I'm in Russia. I'm a Russian in Russia. What can I change? Mm-hmm. Nothing.
Yeah.
By that logic, I need to go buy 20 pounds of vodka and start drinking right now.
Mm.
That doesn't make any sense. What I need to do is better myself. I don't leave it for others. I don't need to better myself so the world got better around me. I do it for myself.
Yeah.
First and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And Charles should do the same. Dude, if you ever watch this, just take a vacation somewhere.
Yeah, he was extremely pessimistic about people, and that hurt him a lot, I think. I don't know. I don't know. You can just see in all the things that he would do that a lot of people disagree with, I guess, or that a lot of objectivists criticize him for. It all seems to stem from his pessimism, his lack of thinking that there's anyone good out there. And people like him, they claim that they don't care about politics and don't care about those sort of things, and they just stop paying attention. But that seems to be all that they think about. They only think about the direction of the culture and don't actually see these good values in other people, and it leaves them very pessimistic and not unhappy.
Well, I can't understand being pessimistic because I live in a culture that's extremely hard to change. Mm-hmm. And the moment you start changing it, it basically enters the cycle of good people arise and they leave.
Yeah, I mean that's why I don't like to focus on the culture very much. At least that's my big thing. Like I try as hard as I can to avoid thinking too much about the culture and its trends, and just look around me for the good people and go to work, or I don't have work, but like go to school, do the things that I need to do to make myself happy, or make a YouTube channel and talk with people and do all those sort of things, and I don't know, find happiness from that, and kind of ignore the rest of the culture and ignore politics, because that doesn't really matter. Like I have 80 years left here, hopefully, depending on if depending on how long it takes for medicine to get nationalized. But I got some years left here, and I just want to make them the best I can. Because like the thing is, the fact that I was born into this culture, or the direction, whatever direction it's going, that's not something that I can change. It's just something I have to accept and move forward and make the most out of it that I can.
Well, I try to focus on my own morality, because for me, objectivism, first and foremost, it caught me with morality. Like people keep speaking about like epistemology and metaphysics. It's important, yes, but for me, it's a done deal. Like I already know my epistemology and metaphysics. I already know how to live my life well. I just need to remind myself that there's a reason to live my life.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
But like we're not in the concentration camps yet. We still have so much that we can do. And
Well, speak for yourself.
What?
Speak for yourself, I said. I can be thrown into gulag any day now. I'm too visible.
Yeah.
Actually, it won't happen. Even like the only people who really get persecuted in Russia are those who really go against the power. Like if you speak on the internet about how Putin is bad, nothing really happens. There's a lot of articles and magazines about classical liberalism. They never get persecuted. They just exist, and that's it. But if you start speaking something really against power, like creating movements, actually fighting or trying to get elected, they can fuck you up. Like our nationalist party, like the only good party in Russia is Republican Party.
Yeah.
Like, believe it or not. Why are you sniffing?
Oh, what?
You're sniffing.
Oh, because I'll blow my nose quick.
You slowly turned into Zizek.
Diego would be mad if I keep sniffling. There was a couple videos in there where I had a cold and I was just constantly sniffling, and every video Diego just commented, "You need to blow your nose, Gary. Stop sniffling." Great video, but I couldn't get over the sniffling.
You don't turn your content into Slavoj Žižek. Every time I try to people keep linking Slavoj Žižek to me as the guy who criticizes capitalism. He shows how bad capitalism is. I opened the video and he's basically, well, this spending, this bad. Jordan Peterson. Like, am I supposed to watch this?
Oh my god.
Is he having a seizure or something?
Oh man. So
and at the same time.
So speaking of capitalism, though, something that he obviously has destroyed with his sniffling, but whatever. Speaking of capitalism promotes big things. Big butts are big things. Therefore, those who truly promote capitalism like big butts. That's just logic. And I'm sorry to say that if you don't like big butts, you're an immoral person and can't be an objectivist.
Well, I like Megan Thee Stallion. That qualifies me as objectivist.
Of course.
Do you?
I don't know.
Do you
what she
like
looks
Megan?
I haven't listened to much of her music, and I don't know if I've seen enough of her to know.
She's pretty big and has very round ass. Like when you think about a stereotypical black woman, that's kind of her. And she's very loud, and she's like, I think it's called sassy, if that's correct too.
Oh yeah, that would make sense.
I'm trying to be more politically correct than I am in Russia. You see, in Russia we don't really have slurs for black people.
Oh yeah.
Like when you say nigger here, it's not a slur.
Oh God.
I didn't. No. I didn't say that word. I said Negr. That's it.
Okay. Okay.
Negroid. That's the word. Sorry. Okay, when we don't have a slur for black people at all. There's no way to insult a black person specifically here. Like there is a slur for Arabs. I won't say it, but there's no slur for Africans or blacks. It's mostly because we never interacted with them. We never had a war with African country.
Yeah.
Immigration from African countries is extremely low. Like, African Russians are less than 1% of population. Although there's a funny story about it. You know that USSR had a Olympic Games in USSR, right?
Oh yeah.
After those Olympic Games, the black population of Russia doubled. You know why?
Why?
Because they put all black athletes in the same building.
Yeah.
And to those buildings, Slavic girls kind of went to pilgrimage. They never seen a black person before. They were interested.
Yeah.
So a lot of fatherless children being born the next year.
Oh my God.
It still happens to this day. Like Nigerian workers get a worker visa here.
Yeah.
They work here for 2 years, and they leave a child.
Oh my God.
I know 2 of those people. Like they're half Russian, half Nigerian, and their mother is so rich she didn't even notice the disappearance of her father. Like, he can't get a visa to migrate here. It's kind of hard. But if you're born in Russia, it doesn't matter what your skin color is. You're Russian now.
Hey.
You're Russian now.
Oh man. Yeah,
Here's your vodka.
Russians are stereotypically like not caring about political correctness at all, just like being very blunt.
Yes, blunt is the correct way.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of got famous for as well. Like that's very your answer.
Oh yeah.
It's also a problem because like when I make my videos, if you watch my videos, they all very very short.
Yeah.
That's because I have nothing else to say. Like I took my point and distilled it to the very the smaller, most understandable part of it.
Yeah.
And then I explain it from A to B, and that's it. Like I know that normal people, they put a lot of like historical, like in my new video about Czeslaw Milosz.
Yeah.
I try to like nobody knows what he is, so I will explain who he is. I will explain what he written, where he lived, and the general culture where he comes from. That will add time, of course, and it will be relevant. But my natural instinct is just skip all that and go straight to ideas.
Yeah.
Even when I was writing, like as a teenager, I was writing a lot of fiction. My fiction was always very small as well. Like there was one space fiction. It went through 3 years of like endless tribal warfare, and it was 60 pages.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, that's weird that Russian novels are stereotypically so long, though.
Yeah, but that's because they're in Russian, and I write in English. Russian is very poetic. And Russian words are very long usually. And there is a lot of like when I write in Russian and write in English, there are 2 different things. In Russian, I can get like detailed. I can make a witty reference to something.
Yeah.
Because of the way our language is structured. In English, that doesn't work. Like, I showed my script to my last video to Diego's wife. She's like, "You're way too poetic here for no reason." Like, I had to drop 3 jokes out of that script because they didn't work. They work in my mind, but they don't work in the English. There was a joke about Beyonce there. I tried to say that socialists probably imagine Beyonce storing her $60 million between her like cheeks. And she's like, the way you wrote it, it sounds like you're envious of her cheeks. Okay, I'll just drop that. I don't want to be someone who's envious of Beyonce cheeks. Although I kind of am with my fucking fat cheeks.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I guess it does make sense though, because like if you're talking in a second language, you're a lot more. You want to just get to the point. You don't want to like. You don't have as much ability to like stretch it out and add all these like extra words, extra fluff.
Yeah, I don't really know many words too. Like in English, there's a lot of synonyms, but I'm not aware that there's synonyms. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have to like I wrote a small fiction recently for Eve Online, and I had to use thesaurus.
Use what?
Thesaurus, the side with synonyms.
Oh, a thesaurus.
Ah, yes, thesaurus.
I didn't know what you meant there. How was it?
I have a tendency to read silent letters. You see, there's no such thing in Russian as the silent letter. If you see a Russian word, all letters in it are pronounced.
Yep.
It's a phonetic language.
Yep. English, we just make letters silent randomly for a lot of the time.
We even have special letters to signify what type of sound you need to make. Meaning, if you need to make a silent R, you type R and then a letter, literally called the soft letter.
Yeah, English can be weird when it comes to pronunciations. Like, do you know the letter combination OUGH?
Yeah, like when I first,
you know the letter combination OUGH?
Like,
like in rough, in the word rough, or through, or what's another word that has a different? There's so many different pronunciations.
Though, rough, through, though. Like it never made sense to me at first. I just remember how to do it.
Yeah.
Like in Russian, those all will be said the same.
Oh yeah, I watched a video, or there was like this, I guess, comedy video that I watched in a Spanish class that was about that basically, and like there was a Spanish lady, or there was this English student and this Spanish lady who was trying to like teach her how to pronounce, or she was like reading in a book in English, and then she just kept mispronouncing the OUGH, and then and the dude was like, no, it's pronounced like this. She's like, what the hell? This is all different pronunciations. Like your language is terrible.
You should hear my English at first. Like I still have like my accent is indestructible. I try my best, but I still sound like. Did I hear something? No. I still sound like stereotypical Russian.
Yeah.
The moment I open my mouth, everybody's like, "Are you Russian?"
Yeah.
Some
Rand
people
Rand did the same thing. If you hear any of Rand's speeches, it's so.
The way she pronounces.
Oh, I love it.
Bromides. Conservatism.
Oh my God.
I watched her lectures and I just sat there like, do I sound like this? I realize I do.
Oh man.
There are certain words I just cannot pronounce.
Yeah.
Like I look at them and they make no sense for me.
Yeah.
Just scribbled letters.
Oh man.
Like for example, how do you even say that?
What word?
Contemporary.
Contemporary?
Yeah. Or compart integrated. It takes me compart integration. Like
I don't know that word.
Maybe I even pronounce it wrong.
Compart integration? I don't know what that or.
Shit. It's when you like don't integrate things properly.
You integrate compartmentalize?
Yes, compartmentalized. You see, you see, some words just don't make any sense to me. And, in my mind, by the way, Nietzsche wrote about that.
Yeah.
He presented how there's a Latin word for like crossbow, arbalista. Germans looked at that word, and over time, it became armbrust. In Russian, it became arbalet, not arbalista, but arbalet. People of different cultures keep dropping different parts of words.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense with our pronunciations.
Yeah. That's how languages develop and exist, I guess.
Like in 100 years, the current Spanish will be nothing like the future Spanish will be nothing like current Spanish.
That's true. Although the internet might be able to change things like that with like people are like knowing these sort of languages already and like being so documented. Maybe.
Yeah, but it was still like you can't go around people being more accustomed to different sounds by them knowing that. Like, just like me, I'm very used to speaking English. It's a second language for me.
Yeah.
I have upper intermediate level, and if you drop me in Curacao right now, I can speak to any Curaçaoan. They all speak English. But I cannot drop my accent. It will take me hard work with a linguist to do even partially drop it. Because usually I speak Russian my whole day. Like in my job, I explain everything in Russian. I type in Russian. I yell at my intern in Russian, although I never yell at her. She's better at my job than me, so what would I yell at her? She is. Yeah, she actually had a proper education. I'm self-taught.
Oh.
And we hired her when I was in the clinic. So she hadn't seen her boss for 3 months. Me. And when she saw me, I was like limping and wearing a corset. I can't imagine that. Like, you get hired, you go to your job, and like, where's my boss? Oh, he's in clinic. He fell down the stairs. He's been there for 3 months now.
Oh man.
And now she has to test for me when I'm in the clinic and she's in the office. We speak through text.
Yeah.
She did everything right. I have nothing to complain.
Yeah. That's good.
Although, like, our developers really need a strong hand. They're like slacking, and nobody slacks around me. Like, you probably didn't notice because I'm very friendly now, but I'm kind of scary looking. Like, when I need somebody to work, they will work for me.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm usually never I never yell at people. I never get rude. I just look a bit scary.
You just look scary?
I'm kind of big. Like, you don't see it on my laptop, but I'm kind of big.
Yeah.
And most of people in my job are like, you're bigger than them. It looks like most of my developers are like this tall, and they kind of look like this. 2 of them are hicking. Like, no offense to people who hick, but like they're hicking.
What?
Hicking, like speaking like this.
Oh, stuttering? I don't know
Stuttering.
what hicking is.
Isn't that the same?
I've never heard that word. Maybe I just don't know that word.
Okay, they're stuttering. Like, I understand their problem. Like, I never been an ass about it. I'm just saying that developers in Russia usually very small and
timid.
Timid people. Like, that's the word. And I'm kind of like big and loud person. So they listen to me.
Oh, nice.
Comes with the job.
Yeah.
Also, it seems, even if I don't...
Nietzschean dream of being powerful.
No, that's not Nietzschean. That's more friendship level. Like, I'm not being an ass to them. I'm not ordering them around. I'm trying to be their friendly boss. Like, I don't like screaming at people at all. Like it's
Yeah.
very hard to make me raise my voice. It's pretty much impossible. You need to strike me to make me do it.
Yeah.
Like even in the ring when I was boxing, it's hard to get me off my temper.
Hmm.
Like I'm usually just like in this conversation.
Yeah.
I speak a lot. I talk about like all the things in the world.
Yeah.
Every single detail can get me on a rant,
Yeah.
and I guess that's charismatic because like I keep getting promoted. My boss keep telling me that like I can't imagine anybody else on your place. I guess I'm charismatic this way.
Ah, that's nice. That's a good thing.
Maybe.
Oh.
My ex told me that there are a lot of things I don't understand because people treat me right. She had a famous phrase, "That's a thing only you won't understand."
Hmm.
I was like, I'm a bit privileged.
Yeah. Huh.
So at this point in my life, I make good money. Until the last year, I looked like, right now, I'm much smaller than I used to be. Like my shoulders were very packy. I was thinner and bigger in all ways.
Hmm.
And I got into very good company. Like
Yeah.
there's no strict hierarchy there. There's no yelling at your workers.
Yeah.
There's no deadlines. There's no crunching. We just do our jobs and we go home.
Oh, that's nice.
Even if we kind of like, excuse me, if I go to another company, I will be making more money,
Mm-hmm.
but there's crunch involved.
Hmm.
Like you know what crunch is, right?
Yeah, when you're like out of time and you or yeah, yeah.
Like my friend went to work to Blizzard, believe it or not.
Yeah.
She's a very good translator. Like my English is nothing compared to hers.
Hmm.
So she translated from English, from French, and from Japanese.
Hmm.
She's a very good linguist. She's the one who went to Black Mountain this year, my last friend. So, so she went to Blizzard, and the very like she was living in France. She was making good money, like everything was going fine, and she kept telling me that I would love it in France because I quote every time I go to a grocery store, I see a different African woman.
Nice.
So,
Oh man.
but the crunch there in Blizzard was just unprecedented for her.
Yeah.
Like people kept living on the job. They were working 12 hours and staying in the special room where they had beds.
Oh man.
It's not even real.
That's crazy.
Like
So
for
who do you like hang out with now that all your friends are gone?
my new friend, but she's about to go
Uh
too. She found a girlfriend in Moscow, so she's moving out.
uh
I'm kind of lost right now. Like,
hmm.
who I hang out with? My last friend went to Black Mountain. My new friend is going to Moscow. My ex moved to Germany. I don't hang out.
Oh no.
The new year I spent alone. I went to pub alone.
Oh no.
I just drank myself into two.
Uh
Like,
I don't know.
and they,
What to recommend? Like I don't know, get out and talk to people. I don't know, man.
yeah, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think I will just like have a colleague with whom we can hang out.
Yeah.
I'll try finding like Tinder didn't work so far. Like
Hmm. Yeah,
it's a bit of a desert.
Tinder's not good.
Like, I tried alternative, but it's even worse. There's one application I had not a single match for a month.
Oh.
That's not possible. I'm not ugly. And even if I was ugly, even ugly people get a match a month.
Yeah.
So I just need to find some friends.
Yeah.
When I interact with people, I'm much more optimistic.
Hmm.
Sitting alone at home kind of gets me into bad mood. I need to
Yeah.
control myself.
Yeah. That's definitely like definitely just being alone at home is not it makes you very pessimistic. I think I don't know if that's what Charles was doing. I can That's my suspicion of probably why he was so pessimistic, because
Yeah,
I don't know if he
if
was
he's
getting a
lonely,
yeah,
if he's lonely, that explains everything.
yeah, because
I've been lonely for a year.
he had his girlfriend at at the beginning of when he started doing his podcast, but I don't know when that relationship ended, but it seemed he became a lot more pessimistic as
Hmm.
time went on.
Well, I can saying that if you had a really good relationship, and it seems that he had a really good relationship,
Yeah.
and then it breaks, you can go a lot of places. Let's say
Uh-huh.
that. I
Yeah.
almost went MGTOW after my first relationship. I kept watching the content, and it kept making more sense little by little.
Oh
But
yeah.
then you step out of it, and suddenly it's crap.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's I think most people have had like some MGTOW tendencies, or like some have been attracted to MGTOW to an extent. Um,
Like right now, thankfully, my last relationship went we didn't literally break away. Like
mhm.
she just migrated to Germany. It's not because of me. It's not because of any problems with us.
Yeah.
There was no problem. We watched Netflix. That was the extent of our problems. Like only disagreement is what to watch on Netflix. Everything else,
Hmm.
let's go there, sure. Let's do that, sure.
Yeah.
Like it was very fresh because like my previous girlfriends were all Slavic women.
Hmm.
Most Slavic women are very naggy. Like right now, I have a bit of chaos in my room. If my mother saw it, she'd probably have a heart attack. Same with my girlfriends. Most of them will be like nagging me to now and to like clean this
Yeah.
right now, right here, and right now. I just clean it as it goes. Like in 2 days, it will be nice looking again. And when I started dating a Zulu, she doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
What chaos in the room? I don't care. What's on Netflix? Let's watch some Netflix. They want pizza?
Yeah.
That was very fresh for me. Like, finally, as someone who doesn't give a crap.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh
Maybe
man,
that's a bad.
all my experiences with women have been me just being like excessively honest, I think, and I'd point out like any sort of negative thing that I felt, and then that would lead to some conflicts, and that made a lot of my relationships bad.
It was very hard to point out anything negative with the last one.
Hmm.
First of all, like, I have no complaints as she looks. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't complain
like,
about looks ever. It would just be
ah,
if I thought something, I would just say it. Like I don't.
oh, she did the same though.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good thing, I think.
She gave like one time she went to my like corporate party. She spoke to all my bosses, and by the time we got home, she's like, "You're the most dumbest person I know." Like, all your bosses, all your bosses, all your bosses adore you. They think that you're one of the best workers ever, and you treat yourself like shit.
Hmm.
Like, it kind of was true. Yeah, I tend to undervalue myself.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot
My
of man, it's nice to have people criticize you. That's one thing that I think is definitely the case. And but a lot of people just they can't handle it. They can't handle any sort of negative thing that you say about them, and I don't know. So I don't know. All my experiences with criticizing people have been very negative, and it's ended a lot of. I don't even think that I was that bad in like criticism. I would try to be apologetic. I'd try to make sure that they knew that it wasn't like attacking their character or anything like that. But I would just say if I saw something negative, I'd just say it, and then I don't know. People get really mad, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people do. Like, I had a girlfriend who was bad at getting positive recognition.
Mm.
Like, imagine that you're dating, you watch like a Jackie Chan movie,
Mm.
and in Jackie Chan movie there's a actress called Ahilela, I think. Like, she's a tanned girl, like, and she like very fit and fights a lot. And like, she looks good, and I don't mean anything by it. And and my ex immediately snaps at me because like, huh, but she looks nothing like me. So if you like women that look nothing like me, do you really like me?
Oh God.
What? So
God, there's so many problems with self-esteem with people. I feel like if you Ah, man, that relates to criticism too, because if you're someone who reacts so strongly to criticism, it just shows that you don't have that much self-esteem. You don't
That was another
you're not
problem. I
certain of
kept my
yourself.
mouth shut about everything around her.
Yeah.
Like she kept getting fatter. I'm like, first of all, I don't really care. But second, if I criticize her for it, we're going to get into another fight for 3 hours again.
Yeah.
I don't need that. It
Yeah.
ended up so bad that I started staying on my job overtime just not to go home.
Oh no. That's
I
when you
kept
know you gotta end it.
I kept working 11, 12 hours just to spend less time with her.
Oh man.
So yeah, my relationships, except the last one, are a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
I don't want it to ever happen again. And like maybe go from my example, date black women. Maybe it help you too.
Maybe.
Is it hard to find one in your surroundings?
Um, kind of. I don't know. Back home, it wouldn't have been very hard, but maybe here in Nebraska, it's a little tougher. If I were to like go look for exclusively black women.
In Russia, it's extremely hard. I don't exclusively look for that type of woman, but if I did, it's a nightmare. Like I know three in like a giant Saint Petersburg. Saint Petersburg is about 1,000 square miles diagonally,
Hmm.
or how you like measure it. Basically, it's a very, very big city.
Yeah.
And total population of African or Afro-Russian women here is like less than 1%.
Oh man.
So if I'm to make that choice to only go for them, that's insane.
Yeah.
So I tried to go for like Slavic women too, but like
Yeah.
the last one I tried, she like we had a conversation and she's like, I think I'm more into girls. Fuck.
Oh no.
Same thing. Same thing.
And then you grew your hair out to look more like a woman.
No, I always had long hair.
I'm kidding.
Although when I was very young in my school, I did look like a girl a little.
Mm.
My nose wasn't broken yet. Like if you look at this shit, it's broken inside.
Mm.
It's I broke it 2 times, and the last time it was beaten to the left, to the right.
Mm.
So it badly grew back. So now it looks like I'm a fucking eagle. But back then it was kind of straight, not so big. And since I was very thin, from behind I kind of looked like a girl.
Oh man.
I even got my first girlfriend because of that.
Well, how'd that happen?
Well, she said that I look cute. She liked that. Like, okay. When I started working out, a lot of people told me to stop because like you losing your cute factor. Thank you. That was my goal from the start. I didn't want to look like a girl,
Oh man.
Because like if you have long hair in Russia, you're getting beaten probably.
Mm.
Like it's serious. If you go to the streets with your hair as long as mine, you have a lot of trouble in provincial cities. People stop you and ask you about it, like, why your hair is so long? Are you gay?
Have you had experience with that?
Yes, several times.
Really?
But because I was like, first of all, like our small city didn't allow for that. Everybody knew who my father was, so they didn't stop me on the street. But when I went to different cities, they didn't know who I am, of course. So I was several times stopped on the streets to like being questioned. But because I have natural charisma and I'm kind of big, I never was beaten for it. I was just insulted and told to stop, like, cut your hair, don't look like a gay.
Oh no.
Yeah,
That's
in Russia,
terrible. I
gay
can't
is a
imagine that.
noun. Well, it happened all the time. One time they even surrounded me and like 3 dudes standing by my side and like, I thought I'm gonna get beaten right now.
Oh
I
no.
was kind of scared. But then I went to boxing and turns out that the champion of this city was the dude with whom I became friends. I didn't try to become friends with him. I didn't know he was a champion. He was just a good dude with whom we like sparred on the ring.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't particularly good at boxing. Like you punch me too hard and I go berserk. Like I go to brawling all the time. I am bad at it. I have long hands. I suck at brawling.
Uh,
I supposed to like keep my enemy on the distance.
mhm.
My coach kept telling like, "You stupid! You have good long hands, and you're pretty thin. So you need to just keep him on a distance. You can punch him. I'm a southpaw, left-handed.
Mhm.
You can easily get through his defenses. But you're stupid." And like after I had several sparrings with that person, he gave me a black eye, but it's normal in boxing. I was told on the streets by another person who I rented from that he spoke with criminal element in this region, and he told them that I'm off limits now. Like, that guy left with long hair, you don't touch him.
Oh,
He's my homie.
hey.
He gave me his number. Like, if anybody talks to you, like, give them that number and they'll stop. Okay. I never asked for this. It came in handy, but like,
Yeah.
I have no idea why people treat me that well. Although it's kind of typical. Like, I know people who like weren't so lucky. They were smaller than me. They were clearly weaker than me, visibly, and they were beaten for having long hair. Just beaten
That's
on
terrible.
the streets. Like, my best friend was beaten for that. Although, like, nothing, like, no offense to him, but he clearly looks like someone who can't get beaten easily. Like, he's kind of soft and he's intelligent looking. Like, if you had long hair, maybe people wouldn't really fuck with you in Russia. You're not tough looking, but you're normal looking.
Yeah.
But if you had like soft features like Charles, for example, no offense to Charles, but he would be picked on in Russia. Like, he doesn't look like a fighter.
Yeah.
Looks like a thinker. I ran out of water.
You did that a while ago.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it. You're a fine person to speak with. I keep forgetting. My throat actually hurts. Wait a bit. Wait a bit. Fucking A. I'm back.
Did you get more water?
I just drank more water. What? Oh. I looked at my video feed and there's a 3 dots in there.
What?
I thought when I talk, it shows me the volume. So I thought that's something happening in my window.
Oh, no. Oh, I see that. Yeah. The 3 dots.
Oh, no, my window. Sharky saved me.
Oh, man.
It's snipers. We've been speaking for 3 hours now. Wait.
We have. This is going to be my longest conversation.
Yeah, I think we need to stop because for one, it's too long, and 2, it's about my bedtime.
Oh, it is. What time is it in Russia?
11 p.m.
11 p.m. Oh man. All right.
I got to jump this morning. Next morning. So
right,
yeah.
For sure, man. It was nice talking with you.
Yeah, with you too. It's as if we're old friends. That's a very lenient phrase, and I have to say it like very slowly. If you notice in my videos, I try to speak slowly.
Yeah.
So okay, I think we're done here.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, man. I'll stop the recording now.
Same.
Yep, I'll stop the recording now.